Elric, the new host, taking over the show. Killer POV, and you poor saps who know nothing.
That is not true. That is not true.
All right.
Welcome to Killer POV episode 129, first episode of 2016. We've already hit technical difficulties. This is being recorded in my kitchen.
We're in Rob's kitchen.
Casa Galluzzo.
But he has good tea, so
I've
it's
got
cool.
good tea. I've got plenty of booze here. This is the top of the line booze. And special thanks right off the bat to Andrew Furtado, who stepped up at the last minute and offered to record this for us. Now streaming podcast. Got to give him a shout out.
Aww.
But anyway, we are Killer POV. I am Rob Galluzzo from Blumhouse.com. With me is Elric Kane.
Yes, little Jimmy Hitler in the house. Woo!
He is wearing a beautiful sweater,
I am wearing
too.
my Christmas sweater.
He doesn't want Christmas to end at all.
Why would I?
Well, it is fucking cold in LA today, so the sweater
cold.
is...
Weather has
needed.
caught up to us.
It's raining. It's rough. And actually, the reason I like, because I worked from home today and I didn't have to leave the apartment at all since we're recording here. So this is the whole day. I might not ever
You have
leave.
cabin fever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I want to say is yeah.
Also with us is Rebekah McKendry,
What up?
Blumhouse.com,
Yeah.
editor-in-chief. What's up?
Enjoying tasty tea.
Tasty tea, mint medley. So we have a really awesome guest. Do you guys understand that Michael Dougherty's coming to my apartment
I
soon?
know. Michael Dougherty's coming to your apartment. That is so
That is
cool.
kinda weird.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But we, obviously we had a pretty lengthy break. We had a lot of comments from people about their best of the year, our best of the year, what they agreed with us, what they didn't agree. But we've seen a lot in the last couple of weeks. We've been kind of keeping busy. What should we kick off with? I mean, I think the one thing that everybody watched and talked about, which skims horror because it's true crime, is obviously Making a Murderer on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that seriously, it dominated my break. Like, that was the main thing that I watched. And I watched it in excess and excessed over it and just really got into it and found myself, like, researching it outside of it and everything.
And I think everybody fell, within the first few days, everyone fell into that pattern of hearing everybody talk about it and then just like, all right, I have to see this thing for myself. And it's riveting television. It's just a really, infuriating, an addictive experience about how sometimes the system can fail us. Now, I know there's going to be people.
Non-spoilers. Yeah, we'll go non-spoilers.
Yeah, we're going to be not so, but I know there's going to be people that argue either case, which is, obviously it's following a guy named Steve Avery who was convicted of a crime that he did not commit and served 18 years before he was freed. And then within a few years of getting free, he was suing the
Manitowoc
for like $36 million or something, and then was found guilty for a murder. I mean, look, people, the way the show presents it is obviously it's a documentary, so they're going to present it in a narrative way where it's a little bit more exciting, the kind of twists and turns. But regardless of what you think, whether people are guilty or not, the fact is that neither of those were fair trials.
It's an amazing miscarriage of justice you're watching. And
Yes.
Birth Movies Death actually put it, what I've been saying all week to people, because I get really mad when I see somebody say, Obama should free him. I'm like, okay, I believe this guy's innocent, but you do not free someone because he might be guilty, but deserving of new trial. Sure. Their headline today was, this is not a show about whether Steve Avery's guilty. It's about whether the justice system is guilty. And I thought that was a
That's
perfect
the best way to put it.
to encapsulate what we're talking about.
Even because it's not just Steve Dassey. At one point, I think it's his cousin.
Ooh, no more spoilers.
Yeah. His cousin becomes involved in it as well, and then that trial is the one that pissed me off more than anything.
Brendan, yeah.
And so, it's just all about, is it a fair trial, or is it kind of small-town politics?
Right now is so as you can talk about this with other people, because we talk about water cooler shows. This thing is just, it's like everyone, and if you haven't seen it, you're kind of left out. I'll see people go, I've only seen 2, and they just can't be part of the conversation.
We have talked about it in, it came up in the Blumhouse board meeting on Monday, and I had 2 meetings since then, and it's been like a topic of discussion in both of them. So it's got people talking about the justice
All I'm saying
system,
is if it becomes
a
movie, Mark Kelly to play Steve Avery is pure gold.
I'm going to fight
Jeremy Gardner. I'm sorry.
I'm voting Jeremy Gardner.
Jeremy Gardner. He
Jeremy
could have played
Gardner's
when he
not
was
too
20
young.
He totally looks like him.
He's got range.
He could do it.
Mark's got the body. Sorry, Jeremy. I believe in you, but not for this one.
Well, all right, fine. So definitely check that out. What else? What did we see?
I chased that literally that ended, and I couldn't get enough of that Wisconsin, so I went straight into Fargo season 2.
Yes.
And if Fargo season 2 was a movie, it would have been my number 1 of the year. That's
It's
how much I
great.
like Fargo
Wow.
season. It's probably my favorite season of anything.
And you haven't seen season 1 yet?
I had not seen season
Oh,
1.
you're
Oh,
gonna
wow.
let- you're gonna
I
let-
love
didn't need
season
to.
1.
But
Yeah.
season 2 was just this perfect true crime story.
So
and it's
great.
hilarious and dark, and I love all the characters. And that's so rare on TV. I love the characters. I don't want to see anything bad happen to any of them
Right.
because they're so idiosyncratic, and I just thought it was some of the best work by
Yeah, and if you're wondering
everyone
why we're
involved.
talking about it, it's just watch the first episode of Fargo
It's
season
dark.
2.
It's dark.
And the kind of dark humor,
Yeah, it's
murder
black humor.
stuff that happens
Yeah.
is so out of control. And it's funny because me and my roommate watched literally Fargo season 2 and Making a Murderer. I think Fargo's in North Dakota.
Well,
the
it's
second season. It's kind of in the general area.
Minnesota and North Dakota.
So literally,
yeah.
ever since we watched both shows, we nonstop have full conversations as yeah.
There are people in those areas listening to us now, like grinding their teeth
Yeah,
because of that.
We love the way you say yeah.
Yeah,
There's nothing
it's
wrong
fun.
with that.
It's
I want
fun.
to communicate with you.
I blame Dick Grinnett for all of this in the world.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
yeah, he's from there.
He's from Wisconsin. But no, they really are. It really is terrific. It must be hard to see now. I had DVR'd it, so I imagine it might be a little while before it all comes to an
Yeah.
available
Well, it's all on.
platform.
Well, I mean, I watched it on demand on whatever your cable. I have Time Warner or whatever. Was able to watch them all in one shot.
And we'll finish on. Well, let's do TV, because we're talking about
Yeah,
TV.
sure.
Yeah,
I also
I
saw.
did a
you want
lot
to
of
go?
TV.
You go. Yeah.
Well, actually, the TV that I did wasn't horror, so I'll just brush over it really quick. Narcos, I binge watched the entire thing over break and loved it, and also I binge watched F is for Family, which is a cartoon, which for us kids growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, it's highly relatable because it's a family during that time. It's kind of Family Guy-ish, but during that time. So those are the two TV I watched. But yeah, those were kind of
Did
dominated.
you guys all watch the? I assume we all did because it hasn't come up. But the new Black Mirror, we haven't talked about that.
I have not yet, so no
Yeah.
spoilers on
Okay.
that one. The Christmas episode I have not
Yeah.
seen.
It's terrific.
Yeah, it was the Christmas episode that premiered last year, but it popped up on Netflix this December.
No, that has John Hamm in it,
Yeah.
right?
John, yeah,
It
it's
is
Wow.
as
so
bleak as
great.
it gets. It is perfect.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It ended. I was like, you just did. I didn't even need a new season. That was enough for right now. You know.
I didn't watch it because everybody was posting up how bleak it is on Facebook. Everybody was like, "I just watched the new Black Mirror. I should just go die right
But
now."
every episode
and I
is
was
like that.
Yeah.
I can't watch it this time. So yeah, I'll get in the mood and watch it.
Yeah, it's like every episode essentially. So
You should be preparing your child for reality. Your unborn fetus.
Marnie, you should check this out. You mean the unborn?
Yes, the
one.
unborn one needs to get ready. Also, now New Year's Eve, I got really excited and tweeted about how the 80s Twilight Zone was going to be on. So I was really psyched because I've been dying to rewatch those ones. I think the Bruce Willis one and all those ones. And then somebody broke my heart after I tweeted and said, actually, that's the bad 2000 ones where Forrest Whitaker hosts it. And by then I'd already sent my DVR on El Rey for 19 episodes that played that day. So I got home from holiday and I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try this. And I remembered some of them, but not many. I decided to watch the first 5 minutes of every single one. And I'd only keep watching if one hooked me.
Right.
And I watched probably about 3 or 4, but there's 2 that I'd say are really actually quite good if you're ever looking these up. A lot of them are bad. The reason it's bad is they're like 22-minute types of shows, and they'll have 2 per episode, and it feels like
They did
short
2
films.
per episode.
Yeah,
Wow.
this is how I was seeing it presented, but the episodes were definitely 22, 30-minute normal TV. But there was one about killing Hitler. They send a woman back in time to kill Hitler as a baby, which is something people always joke about. I never knew there was an actual episode, and it's really interesting because it actually kind of postulates that, you could do that, but if you make one little mistake, it might get even worse,
Right.
Go for it. So that was really fun. But the best one, because I'm such a big fan, is there was a Jeff Combs episode, and it was called Placebo Effect, and it was actually really cool. It was about this guy who's a hypochondriac, and he goes to the doctor, and she always kind of humors him. And one day he comes in with all these real tumors on him, and they're like, "Oh, what's going on?" And he goes, "Oh, I read this comic book, and I imagined that these aliens were coming." She's like, "Really?" And suddenly you realize everything he's been imagining actually starts happening. A real virus starts because of his imagination, and so
Wow.
she has to kind of almost trick him back into a placebo, into letting it revert. And he's really good in it. So it was kind of worth watching some episodes. I definitely would not say this is a good installation of Twilight Zone.
but there were gems.
A couple gems, and then Ash vs. Evil Dead. We all finished, or you finished? I
Yeah,
finished.
no, I definitely did. And it's funny because you just mentioned that the 22-minute mark thing, and I
Yeah.
think that's been the biggest problem with Ash versus Evil Dead. I mean,
Wait. Biggest problem? It could be
among many, but I mean,
humor.
I love the first like 2 or 3. I mean,
First two I really
Raimi came in and really did an excellent job. I thought the season finale was actually pretty strong.
I thought the last 2 or 3 were getting better, and then the last one was pretty good.
Yeah, because then the last couple kind of, minor spoiler, but they go back to the cabin and it essentially becomes an Evil Dead movie. So it's kind of like exactly what we wanted. There was a period in the middle where it's just like they kind of just fell into a rhythm where it's super short. It's like a setup, gore gag, and then it's over. And there's really not much to it. And you could feel kind of. I think you were saying, no offense to whoever the showrunner is, but it feels like there's no, strong voice keeping it together.
I didn't really feel like there was an overstory. I felt like things happened really quick. Like, oh, this woman hates you. She's coming to kill you. Oh, have a quick love interest with her. And she says motherfucker every second word. And you're like, swearing really doesn't suit this world. Like, it feels like they're improving. Like the actor just decides to say, fuck it. And they keep it in the show. And you go, oh, this is really killing the charm. I really didn't feel Raimi's, I feel like he really was no part of that show. After those first 2 episodes, I feel like if they're going to have a second season, for me to get back into it, it would need to show that we learned some mistakes from first, and we're really. The other thing is it's so New Zealand. It's like there's one thing to shoot in New Zealand, like Evil Dead the movie shot in New Zealand, and I did not notice at all. I thought it was awesome. There's a late shot in this show. In fact, it might be the last shot, and I'm not going to use spoiler, where you see a car driving along. And it is like, you're trying to make this Michigan. And this is like, I don't think you have to be from New Zealand to know that this is like grass country, like farmland, every single shot. And it was just, I don't know, it's things like that were driving me crazy.
Takes you out of it a little.
And I think it goes, honestly, this is the difference. The first 2 episodes and the last one feel like Bruce when he works with Coscarelli or Raimi. Remember Bruce Campbell when he directed himself back in some of those movies where it's really almost unwatchable? I feel like that was what was happening in the middle because they had these New Zealand directors like Michael Hurst, who's the sidekick in Hercules, and he directs a lot of the TV. He did a lot of Hercules and Xena, and the same people are producing this, and it feels like if that's the best people they can find to direct the show. When I was saying to you, the guy who directed Deathgasm is just sitting there. The guy who directed Housebound is sitting there. And then Peter Jackson, who directed the best splatter film of all time, is kind of sitting there. But they're living in that country. I feel like, go ask the Housebound guy. Go, hey, you want to do an episode?
Yeah.
He will knock it out of the
give
park.
It their all,
And so I feel like they're kind of falling back on that typical, it worked for Spartacus and Xena, let's just get those guys. And I'm like, this isn't that. This is a genre show. And those episodes that weren't good are kind of didn't feel like the genre hand, like somebody had made that kind of work.
I'm curious how it'll play as a marathon because technically it's a 4-hour, 5-hour Evil Dead movie because they're all only 20 minutes long, other than the opening episode. So I kind of want to watch them all in a row and see what happens. But started out strong, ended pretty strong, but still, I hope going into the second season, because there's definitely going to be a second one that they learned from the first one. I mean, that's you kind of give a pass for any first season, especially when it's short.
I will say, without a spoiler, I liked how it ended in terms of what could happen in the second season.
Right.
And I also, I see some potential there in terms of the story.
All right. Anything? What else did you see? Let's get to movies.
Well, those are the shows. Lots of movies.
Lots of movies. Well, really quick. Because it was New Year's, obviously, and we have a very limited amount of New Year's movies we could possibly watch. I revisited The Signal, the one from 2007 that stars A.J. Bowen, that guy, Anessa Ramsey, and Justin Welborn, and it was directed by... and, that's the fun thing. I look back, the movie holds up really, really well now. It's not an anthology, but there's 3 directors that follow the through line of kind of this love triangle, and each act kind of, switches perspective of who it's told from. But you look back at it now and it's like, all right, this is David Bruckner, who did probably one of the best segments in VHS, the first one, and for a long time was going to do Friday the 13th. Jacob Gentry, who I like a lot, he did a lot of those my Super Psycho Sweet 16s for MTV, but then he's got like Synchronicity coming out and Night Sky, like a lot of interesting stuff. And then Dan Bush, who did the final segment, and then even on the acting side, it's like Justin Welborn ended up doing a bunch of stuff from the Final Destination movies.
Justified right now. In the last season.
Justified. He was in the Crazies remake. Anessa did Rites of Spring, Yellow Brick Road. Like, everyone's done a lot of interesting work since then. So it's just fun revisiting this movie from almost 10 years ago that is really good, but also has this enormous talent pool that has been kind of in the genre doing indie stuff since. So I really like that a lot. And, of course, I watched New Year's Evil, which is ridiculous.
That one always really bored me. I'm glad you made it through it.
Yes, I watched it with my roommate David Foy, who got really high during it, which helped him tremendously.
I think that would help a lot.
It's a goofy Golden Globus movie. There's things I like about it. I mean, there's like, they're trying to play the whole new wave scene as like a bunch of punk rockers, and there's a guy that calls himself evil that they don't even disguise. That's the funny thing, is like he's just this normal looking dude that's going to kill people at the stroke of midnight every time zone, all in LA. So I think the most fun thing about watching it now is getting to see LA in 1980, now that I'm more familiar with it. Like they're after him when he's on the corner of like, Ventura and Laurel Canyon or whatever. I'm like, God, I wonder what bar he was just at. I kind of know that area.
We should make a list of LA. We should do an episode on all LA
horror.
set
LA
horror.
horror.
So not ones that were filmed here just to film it, but actually it's set as part of the story, because
That'd
be a good
I do find it much more interesting now that we live here.
Yeah. So I like it. It's a goofy slasher from that time period, and it's interesting because it's 1980. So even though it hits a lot of those beats that the slasher movies had, like it's so early on that they didn't know what the formula was. So I like that they throw a bunch of stuff like out there and just do some wild, crazy stuff, and you end up with this weird movie.
Well, sometimes you see really fun slasher films. And
Like the double bill we saw.
And sometimes you see Slaughterhouse.
Rob was talking about Slaughterhouse on Monday at work, and I remember the box cover more than the movie itself. I remember the movie as being just big hulking guy trying to kill people. Like, it was not very exciting.
Very gross hulking guy.
Yeah, it was kind of slimy. No, okay, this movie I think I've told.
Slimy.
Well, set it up, Elric.
Yeah, I've
Elric
told
and
this
I have
story
done
before.
several double features
Yeah,
now.
this double, we did one not very good double feature and then one excellent double feature. So
Yes.
this one was my sister-in-law. Her father was like an actor on Hollywood Boulevard, one of those guys who stands there, and he was like the cowboy. And he died last year, but he did it for 20 years, and he's been in movies. He was Jack's stand-in for Witches of Eastwick. He never made it big, but he happened to have a role in a movie called Slaughterhouse. I'd never seen it. I'd always wanted to see it. I knew there were only the VHS copies, and I thought, one day I got to watch that movie. And then I saw that there was this Blu-ray of it on Diabolic, and so I just paid this $30, intending it as a Christmas present for her, so she can see her dad, who looks pretty good in that. He's like 40 years old or whatever. And so we just I brought it over here, and we paired it with a movie called Axe, which we'll talk about in a sec. And we sat down and watching it. It was really cool to me because I'd known him, he's probably 65 when I knew him, a bit older. But it's really cool seeing him, and he's like kind of a major character. He's like one of the 3 or 4 main characters in the movie. So I didn't know if he was just a cameo. I didn't know what to expect. And so we start watching this movie, and it's like, one of those weird 80s slashers where there's the teen storyline, which is kind of good. Like kind of typical 80s fun, but not great.
Although the teens are questionable because they're not really teens, and some of them look a little older. I'm going to be polite. I don't want.
Yeah. Be polite.
There is some unibrows, I think.
There's some tangerine feel to it. But and then there's this other storyline which is much more gritty and more like a 70s, documentary kind of style, where there's a pig farm and a slaughterhouse for pig farms, and a slaughterhouse that's on the way out, and another guy trying to take it over. And it's just something about these two worlds that never really feel like they should have come together for a movie. And there's one thing we did say, like, we're watching this movie, it's kind of boring, to be honest. I think for slasher fans, everything's worth, you go out and find these weird movies. I wouldn't say this is a must-own for those who are only fringely interested, but like it's probably about 3/4 of the way through, there's this kind of cool sequence where 2 of the characters are wearing masks, and they're trying to scare the girls at a slaughterhouse, and then some, Buddy, the big guy, comes out and slashes some people. And I turned to Rob and I was like, if the movie started with this,
that could have been the opening. Yeah, you know what it was? They actually had a good reason to be at the slaughterhouse. That was the other thing. So, because I guess, is there like a party happening in town or something weird like that?
Yeah.
But the kids have a camcorder and they want to make horror movies, so they go and get goofy masks from like the convenience store, and they have their camcorder, and they're like, "What's a cool, creepy place that we could shoot at around town?" And they're like, "Let's go to the slaughterhouse." So, like, they had a really cool reason for being there,
and they make a cool video out of it.
And they're making a video, and that was the idea. It's like, all right, you girls go and hide. We're going to put the masks on and come in and scare you, and you're not going to know when. And then it starts pouring out. So then you see one of them in the mask, and like kind of lurking behind him is Buddy. And again, this is like in the 3rd act, like leading towards the climax of the movie. But it was really cool, and we were just thinking like this would be like a killer opening. Like the kids go there, you don't know who that guy is. I mean, we know who he is at that
mystery.
point.
It needed a little ambiguity,
but there is no mystery.
Yeah,
like you knew that this guy Buddy that squeaks like a pig is the killer, and he's really gross, especially in high def.
Yeah.
I was telling Becca, I was like, I like VHS because you don't see the snot in his beard like you would on a Blu-ray.
It's funny, that was
really
my favorite
gross.
part.
Oh my god!
But I would say I think I kind of liken it to Mad Men. It's the bad version of Mad Men. Like Mad Men and this, you could watch them both and go, "Oh, Mad Men's really good," and then you watch this and go, "Oh, you tried to be like that." And they have a similarity, but not.
It did
quite.
have a very distinguished box cover. I will
And
say.
I like the tagline and everything. Yeah, but he's got an axe to. What is it? An axe to grind.
He's got an axe to grind.
A big axe.
And it turned out that night, Buddy wasn't the only one with an axe to grind.
Oh,
so,
really a hatchet, to be honest, even though
but
it's called Axe.
The other movie we watched was called Axe.
And here's why I paired it up with that, because it's on a double bill that that Severin Films put out with Kidnap Coed. And these are the films of Frederick Friedel. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
And I saw, this trailer to Axe always plays at these revival screenings you go to, and the trailer is killer. It's so good. So we put on the movie, and I think, what is this, like a lean 67
really
minutes
short.
long? So we're like, great, double feature. That's sold. And it's not what we expected at all. Like, it feels like a kind of a college film, like a really,
or like Herschel Gordon Lewis doing a crime film.
Yeah, because you
Which
kind
I
of
liked.
you're kind of in the middle of a like three thugs like beating up and killing a guy for reasons unknown. Like
you
you're
never
just
hear
like
why they do
you're
it.
like dropped right in the middle of this kind of heist story, and then they're kind of on the run. And there's one point where they're like go to a convenience store and start like harassing the girl that works
there's
there.
a scene that if it was in I'm shocked Tarantino hasn't like directly. I bet you Tarantino's a fan of this movie, but there's a scene that's just like them playing kind of William Tell games in like a 7-Eleven with this girl, and she's on her knees, and they put an apple, and he's like pretending to shoot. And at one point, you see kind of what looks like blood on her head, and you really think he just shot her, and then it kind of just tilts up, and you see the ketchup bottle he just shot, and it's but it's such a good little scene on its own.
And we were like, man, why hasn't Tarantino should lift that?
You could just see that in Pulp Fiction as a throwaway scene, but as a whole, it's a strange movie. But I liked watching it. Like, it's not exciting or anything like that, but it's interesting. Like,
and I think the more interesting aspect was, these two movies have been somewhat lost for a long time, and they were, Severin put a lot of work into it. There's a great feature-length documentary about kind of how these two movies happen, and it's super early. I mean, this guy Frederick Friedel didn't know, he was just starting in the movie business. So these are two little kind of exploitation movies he made, and then he made a bad deal with a distributor that essentially just took the money and ran. And he kind of lost the movies. He never made money off of them, left the business, and that was that. And then they kind of became these like kind of cult classics. So the story behind the making of them is just as fascinating, is more fascinating than the movies itself. And it's interesting because even though there's two movies on here, it says there's a third feature called Bloody Brothers, which is actually the two movies edited together as one movie.
Oh wow!
So it's it's like I'm kind of curious to see that because he used a lot of the same actors.
I want to watch that one. That one guy's really good in it.
Yeah, so that might be kind of fun. But so that was one of the double features we did, and the second one we did, Elric.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever do a better one than
which
this.
was two of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
So much fun. We did The Great Blood Rage, fresh on Blu-ray
Which
from
neither
Arrow.
of us had ever seen.
Never saw it. Heard a lot about it from Jackson Stewart, one of his favorites, a Thanksgiving horror movie slasher. And then we paired it up with Cutthroats 9,
which I've talked about on the show a few times
quite
before.
a bit.
It's not cranberry sauce. It's not cranberry sauce. But there were, these two films were, completely different. And somebody asked me, which one do you like better? It's like, no, there's not even a comparison. These movies are so different. It was actually kind of a great double feature for that reason. But
we
start with Blood Rage.
We paired them up just because they're both movies we heard about, we wanted to see.
Down.
Yeah, not because of a theme or anything.
But I will tell, before we talk about Blood Rage, I will tell people how I got not Hateful Eight, but close enough. Cutthroats 9, because I saw this is just a tip if you're interested in hearing. So our good friends Wild Bill Olson over at Code Red, which are always just absolutely baffling how you get discs from these people. So I saw that Mr. Brian Sauer had a copy.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to see that on Blu-ray. Because I've just not watched that film on purpose because I did not want to see a shit copy.
Yeah,
of it,
I have the DVD of Cutthroats 9, and I was telling Elric earlier today, it looks like a VHS transfer.
It probably was.
It was great.
And you can also, I've streamed it off Amazon before, and it is equally awful.
Well,
it's panned and scanned, and it just looks awful.
No, I'm glad we waited then, because that Blu-ray was excellent.
And so I went online, and of course they had no copies on the Code Red store, and I was like, went on eBay. They ranged from $99 to $150. I was like, what? Then I went back on Code Red's site, and there was this thing called the Spanish 3-pack, where you could get this film, People Who Own the Dark, the other one you really like.
Which is awesome.
And, which I haven't seen yet. And the something Vampire Orgy for $60. All three of them.
All three in a
you
three
couldn't
pack.
get it by itself, or you could go online and spend $150 for one. I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to just take this risk on these three movies. And I'm like, so glad I did because, and now I have two other films.
And you got it like the next day, too.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's the
the
weirdest thing. So this is the guy, I've bought discs from these guys where 3 months later you receive it. I swear to God, at the minute I pushed buy, I got an email straight away, and it wasn't automated. It was like with a personalized, where the person goes, "Oh, thank you for your payment. We'll get that out straight away." And I swear to God, the disc came the next freaking day. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Is Code Red like just suddenly desperate? They're sending shit out straight. But either way, it's great. And so I really encourage you supporting. I think if they had lots of support, maybe they'll keep doing quick, fast turnaround.
I kind of want that 3-pack now that you picked it up.
And now
really
I'm
keen
going
to
to make you guys watch People Who Own the Dark with me.
Oh, no,
because
that'll be my next
that,
one.
it kind of skipped DVD. It's been on VHS
Yeah, it's on
tape.
VHS, yeah.
Elric borrowed my VHS tape
I
for
never
like a
watched
year
it.
before you gave it back.
Yeah, I never watched it. So.
But again, it's
Way to go.
VHS resolution.
I had hindsight that this would happen. I knew it would come to it. But no, we will do that actually maybe for next week.
Yeah.
So, but let's backtrack. So that's how you can get it if you're wondering, how the hell do I get it? Get the 3-pack instead of the long.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Blood Rage. Okay. So Blood Rage, I told Rob, this is the only thing I want to see on Earth.
He was so excited
I've been
when
wanting
he
to
came
see
over.
this for a long time. Jackson, I'll tell you why, because for when Jackson wrote that it was one of his, we did a thing on, I think it was Instagram for a while back. It was like a year ago where everyone did their top 3 movies, and his was number 1. I was like, what the fuck's that movie? I hadn't heard of it, and then I looked it up and accidentally saw something about a monkey. So for about a year, I thought it was a movie about and I think that's Primal Rage.
Oh, wrong movie.
And so in my mind, I was like, he likes this movie with a killer monkey. I hate killer monkey movies because I really don't like killer monkey movies much. But
You're not a big Shockma fan?
Not really.
I
Or
don't like
Shakma. Monkey Shines.
Even Monkey Shines. But then when I heard it was a Thanksgiving thing, I got excited for a couple months. And this movie really lived up to the hype because it was kind of like every couple scenes we would like lift our hands up in the air and go, yes.
Yeah, there was a lot. I mean, it's there's we won't give them away much, but there are twin brothers. One is murderous, one is not. One perhaps framed the other one, and then it follows a lot of.
Wait, no, that's Goodnight Mommy.
That's what we were saying. I was like, oh, maybe we should double pair it up so that would be the boring one, and then we could watch Blood Rage.
And then watch Blood Rage. Yeah.
But no, it's interesting because the gore was great. There's a lot of really interesting set pieces. The Blu-ray looked fantastic, but all the gore set pieces are great. But it's like everybody's slightly in an off movie. Like the lead woman, what's her name again? Lori.
From what was the TV show? Mary Hartman.
Yeah. And her name was, I'm looking at it, Louise Lasser.
Yeah.
She practically whispers for every scene she's in. Everyone makes very odd decisions in it, where normally that would be a bad movie, but this was bordering on almost Pieces good.
Yeah, I think that's the closest comparison.
It's kind of like Pieces, where it all works for whatever reason.
No, I really think it's almost as good as Pieces. Nothing's as good as Pieces.
Nothing's as good as Pieces.
No, nothing is.
But it's got that kind of.
But it was fun, and so again, some of the gore set pieces really made us kind of start cheering and stuff. And
it's not cranberry sauce, Rob.
It's not cranberry sauce. And then the brothers are actually played by the same actor, and I thought he did a pretty good job considering that I believed he was 2 different people.
Yeah, and I think it was. It's a difference between some of these slashers from that period where you look at Slaughterhouse or New Year's Evil or something, and they're just not that good, but they're not bad, like a fun bad. And then this is like I think you have to be ambitious to be fun. This has got ambitious gore. It's got ambitious gag effects. It's going for it. It's not trying to be self-referential or funny in that sense, and it wins you over even when it's bad because of that.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I think it's honestly one of the most fun movies you could invest in if you're looking for something you have never seen before.
Right. And we were already like, oh, we won the night already, no matter what.
It was a score.
And then I knew nothing about Cutthroat's Nine other than what Becca's mentioned, and I think I've seen the trailer a few times.
Yeah, they played it. They play it at the New Bev a lot before movies, and they've done it at Cinefamily. They do the same thing where they'll show scenes of it.
Don't watch the trailer because we watched it after, and it's a highlight reel of the best scenes of the movie.
It is. It's all the gore scenes put together.
But you wouldn't know. I mean, when I was watching it, I was like, this is all out of context, though. This makes no sense. But I think what Elric and I were really surprised about was how good of a movie it is. And not to say that we expected it not to be a good movie, but because of the kind of gore element being kind of, highlighted, we thought, it's going to be like an exploitation kind of Western sort of deal.
It is, but it's a good exploitation Western.
But that's the thing
but it's still it doesn't. No, I thought it was going to be cheesy kind of grindhouse or something, and it's not that.
And the plot is really the plot was really strong.
High concept almost.
High concept.
Without spoilers,
lots of twists. I mean, we can see a comparison to something like The Hateful Eight because it's
well, and I can
in
see the
that
influence
wheelhouse.
for sure Quentin had from it. I mean, there's certain scenes where you're like, I'm sure he's seen this movie and liked it very much.
Yeah.
Actually, he wrote an article in Fango last year, or we didn't. He either guest wrote it or we did an interview with him about his favorite westerns. This is when he was starting on Django, and he mentions Cutthroat Nines
and
a
Great
few
Silence,
times in
I'm
it.
sure, because they're both these and the other similarity being both Great Silence, this, and Hateful Eight are all snowbound westerns, which are very rare, and they both have a lot of gore. They both borderline have little bits of horror to them.
Another one that he mentioned, which is fucking phenomenal. I grew up with westerns. It's like the only thing that my dad ever watched, so I know westerns like ridiculously well, even though I don't watch them as much now. But Shoot the Living, Pray for the Dead was another one that he mentioned. Gatling Gun, which is kind of fringy western, but is definitely kind of has the same tones as in there.
Right.
But yeah, there's some really top-notch ones that kind of just get lumped in with like spaghetti westerns that are really fucking good.
Well, and this one's paella western, which is, I looked it up just to make sure the difference being because it came out of the Spanish system, not the Italian, which surprised me because I'd never heard of a paella western. I thought that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think it's a really good story. I think a lot of the choices are interesting, and it kept knocking you off guard with protagonists and who you should be following. And I thought on that level alone, it made it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, every few minutes we would look at each other and be like, "Wait, really? That's what's going to happen now? All right, I guess." And I think there was maybe 5 minutes left to the movie. Obviously, not spoiling the ending, but there's not 5 minutes, and Elric's like, I have no fucking clue how this movie could possibly end. Like that, we were at that point where it's like, you've already surprised us so much that even though there's more movie to go, I have no idea what you're going to do.
So if that hasn't sold you, imagine that mixed with literally Fulci-like gore sequences that you've never seen in a Western. I've seen a lot of Westerns, never seen one that had that kind of like bowels being, a person being disemboweled and stuff. It's like, you're like, whoa, even that Fulci Western doesn't have real gore, of the apocalypse or whatever.
Yeah.
My warning would be, I mean, it's story-wise and acting, it's all great. I was thrown off a little bit by the editing. Like, there's some odd editing choices. Obviously, there's a lot of the pauses and like that weird stuff.
I think it's just like when techniques were coming, and somebody would have said that those guys probably went to a French film and saw a freeze frame and went, "Oh, we got to do that
a lot."
But it didn't bother me. But I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And that guy's director is Marchant, is his last name, and really recommend it. Obviously, I don't think I'll ever have a proper release outside of the disc, I would imagine. So it's probably well worth it.
And by the way, I mean, whereas something like the Blood Rage Arrow, and the Scream Factory stuff is like pristinely like cleaned up or whatever. Cutthroat's Nine is the best it's going to look, but what I liked about it is it does still have a lot of scratches. You see the cigarette burns, but it still looks great.
But it's light. I mean, that's the difference. Yeah, it feels light.
It felt grainy and kind of, we were into it.
I don't know. You guys just said that this might be the only release it ever gets. We're seeing such a reemergence right now of kind of these gritty westerns, like new ones.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this might have kind of like a grindhouse effect where we're starting to see some of the westerns getting cleaned up and re-released, because a lot of them, like even the one I just mentioned, Shoot the Living, Pray for the Dead, never made it off VHS. There's a ton of them like that, so I'm hoping that this might kind of push them out a little bit
this
more.
year, and this film does fall perfectly between Bone Tomahawk and Hateful Eight, like literally right between the two kind of movies.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, also you have Ty West's has a Western upcoming for a lot of us.
Valley of Violence.
A lot of us are going to be excited to see that, and so I don't know. I think the Westerns will never. I don't believe the Westerns will ever come back and become a normal mode of storytelling. I think they come back every once in a while when
with a couple solid.
When you can say something with them that feels modern.
Yeah.
And that's why I liked Hateful Eight so much.
Yeah.
I think maybe some people are missing that about Hateful Eight, that it feels very modern and it's like he's saying something about now, but through the lens of the past. And I think a lot of people who are
very
maybe
relevant.
hating on it are maybe looking a little too surface level of what he's doing with that movie. I loved it completely. So.
Well, a world away from Westerns, it dawned on me over break that I had never seen In the Name of the Rose. And so I watched it.
Shame on you.
I know, right? And I tweeted about, hey, I just realized I've never actually seen this movie. And then everybody on Twitter was like, oh my God, are you serious? You're going to love it. I did not love it. I deeply enjoyed it.
I don't remember. It's thriller-ish. Yeah, that's right. It has some thriller. I saw it when I was like 10 on TV, and I remember it being fun.
I think that's when everybody saw it. It's a murder mystery. It's a murder mystery set in like the Dark Ages.
Yeah, Dark Ages monastery.
It made me feel cold. It made me be grateful I could take a shower afterwards.
That's good.
Yeah, but if you're into kind of murder mystery thrillers, it's definitely got some interesting stuff, and not just Sean Connery. It's also Christian Slater in like his first role ever.
Yeah, he's super young.
And apparently there's like controversy of if he and the girl actually have sex on set. Apparently there's controversy there. It looks legit, but I don't think so because he's like way young in it. So.
Also, we lost another great cinematographer, Vilmos Zsigmond, and I just wanted. That night, weirdly enough, I swear to God, the night before Close Encounters, which I had not seen since I was like 9 years old, was on Turner Classic. I pushed record the next day, found out Vilmos had died, and so I watched it that night. And it's an amazing looking film. I felt it didn't really grab me narratively like I imagined it had when I was younger anymore. It's kind of, I know it's a different kind of movie, but it is still gorgeous to look at. But guy shot Deliverance and Deer Hunter, two of the best looking American films. But he also started in horror, and he started in really low budget, like Becca's favorite, The Sadist.
Yes.
And it's funny because you can tell somebody with a great eye shot that film.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's literally a guy takes a couple of teachers hostage at a gas station.
It's kind of a trash dump too.
It's
right?
totally. It's in the desert and it's a sweaty film. And you can tell that it's kind of like what Rob Zombie wanted Devil's, like he pulled from that a lot. But
the
it's
compositions
the
are
most
amazing.
beautiful film ever.
Now he shot a bunch of other like indie kind of low budget horror stuff. And the only other thing I saw, which is a fringy horror, it's called Queen of Earth. I wanted to see it before it's on Netflix streaming, which you could listen to the Andrew Furtado show about.
Now streaming.
It's Elizabeth Moss it's getting like 95% on every review, and every review mentions how this is Elizabeth Moss from Mad Men. This is like her breakthrough. It's kind of like Repulsion and Persona mixed together, but very light, and I'd say very light on the horror part of that. But the funny thing is, she is like nowhere near like there's this other actress in it who I just kept going, oh God, I hope I can cast this girl, Catherine Waterston, and I got all excited and because she's like the other lead, and she's so freaking good. And then the movie ends, and I look her up, and I'm so excited about the idea of putting her something down the road. And then I look that she's like just been picked up for like whatever the Harry Potter spin-off movie is. She's the lead, and then another Marvel movie, and I was like, because this is a very gritty indie thing. Yeah,
She's out.
But for somebody, this is Alex Ross Perry. He's become kind of a critical darling, kind of in the vein of the guy Sean Baker who made Tangerine. So definitely not horror. He made Listen Up, Philip last year. This film, if you like those kind of descents into craziness, it's very Cassavetes-like, and it has got a person mentally disintegrating and maybe a bad murder type thing might have happened, but it's all done in the drama sense. If that's your bag, I call it Girls Going Crazy by the Lake. If you want to see a better Girls Going Crazy by the Lake from last year, also on Netflix streaming, The Midnight Swim absolutely rocks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, I love it. Wish I'd remembered it when I was doing my top 10. That's all.
Nope.
So this one was kind of my disappointment of break. So I've talked about it on the show before about how there's this Russian film called V, Spirit of Evil, and it's the one that you can watch and then you go, oh my God, Raimi saw this before he did Evil Dead, because it's the first one where it's got like the first person camera kind of moving through the environment and everything, and it's just very clear that a lot of filmmakers pulled from this, and it's from the 60s.
So is this Vi like a straight remake of the original Vi?
Somewhat. And the big thing that this movie had been built up way too much for me, because I saw a preview of it at AFM like 3 years ago. And I was like, holy shit, they're remaking Vi, which I was excited about to begin with. And then, or V, I'm not even sure how you pronounce it. But then you see what they did with it, and they made it into this 3D action horror blockbuster, things flying at you, crazy CG effects monster movie. And that was in the screener I saw, and I was like, holy shit, this fucking looks amazing. And then nothing ever happened with it, and it never came stateside. And I've been totally bummed, because I was always like, you can find copies of it in Russian on eBay, and it's like Region 3 straight out of Russia or Yugoslavia. And I was always like, I don't understand why they never released this stateside. And I was bitching about it on Facebook a couple days ago, and I never say his last name. Ted Gigagan,
I think.
Messaged me and was like, this actually did come out in America a couple of months ago. They changed the name, which is why I never knew about it. They changed the name to Forbidden Empire. And it was released
Isn't there a Jim Warnowski Forbidden Empire?
Possibly.
From a long time.
And it was released on Blue. And I was like, oh my God. And I found it on Netflix as like one of the DVD rentals, and I still have that. So I went ahead and got it. And I was so excited to finally watch this. And it is the most convoluted, crazy piece of crap ever.
So it's not like the other, where it's this weird, like somebody locking them up with a dead body.
That is still in
coming
there.
to life. Okay.
It still has the whole concept of the original is still there, where it was this girl who was killed by an evil spirit, and on her deathbed she tells her father that a priest needs to be locked in the room with her to pray over her dead body for 3 days and 3 nights. And each of those nights she comes back from the grave and brings demons with her and haunts him.
Tries to seduce him.
Tries to seduce him, all this other stuff. And it goes over 3 days, which is why it's kind of a folklore story, and it plays into what we're about to talk about on the show. That still exists, but this movie, this is not the first time, but this one, if I was to say, name a movie where you can feel studio involvement, this is it, because it's like, and it's not even American. It's like a British and Russian movie, but you can see like there are original scenes that they shot, which are kind of follow the original story, and then they insert this story of this British cartographer who's trying to tour the town, but you can tell that it came in later, like as an afterthought.
Once there's some British funding in the movie, they needed
exactly. And they wanted to distribute it in Britain, so you can tell that it was kind of like, let's throw in these scenes. And it's got all of these different scenes, none of which interconnect, so it's kind of like every single person put their finger in the pudding and said, you know what this film needs? And then there are these scenes where it's like there's a dinner scene where he's eating with some of the local townsfolk, and I kid you not, he's having dinner with a set of triplets and a set of twins. And so then you're sitting there and you're like, I can't even tell who's talking, because it's just like everybody is the same person. It still has some of the coolest monsters that I saw on the screener. It still has these monsters that I'm like, man, I wish this guy was just in a different movie. But I'm interested to see if any of our fans have seen it. Again, it came out a couple of months ago, and it's released here under Forbidden Empire. And it's like you've talked
about it more than any human on Earth, I'm guessing.
I think so. And I was so excited to see this final film, and then I finally did, and it was just like you could literally see the seams of where 15 different investors said, you know what this film needs? It needs a werewolf. Can we put that into one of the scenes? Okay, everybody back up. Let's shoot a werewolf scene. And so it broke my heart because I thought it had so much potential.
Don't
and the
just
screener looked so awesome.
Take Becca's word for it. Putin loved it. Putin says this is one of our best works from Russia.
So, yeah. But I'm curious, if you've seen it, please reach out to me on Facebook and Twitter. I'd really love to have somebody else to talk with about it.
I will never watch that movie.
I will never
go to my grave having never seen that.
I will never expect any of my friends to watch it, because I will tell it's just the most convoluted. Like, I couldn't even tell what was going on at points. So
I'd rather watch a movie by that guy. What's his name? Timur Tubukanudru, or whatever his name, and he did Night Watch and all those crazy
I like that guy.
I'd much rather watch one by him, because he's batshit.
I like Night Watch and Day Watch.
Yeah, that guy's crazy.
Good stuff.
Okay, Rob, what'd you see?
Well, this is my final pick of the week, is my Killer POV pick of the week on Blumhouse.com.
And was my number one film discovery of last year.
Yes, a film that Elric talked about quite a bit called Angst, which is from, this is what, 1983. It's Austria? Is that what
Austrian.
it was?
It was definitely Austrian.
Directed by Gerald Cargill, and based on a true story. A company called Cult Epics put this out on Blu-ray.
They also did the Necromantics.
The Necromantics movies as well.
Is the quality good? Because I'd heard complaints over them. Yeah. Wow, I'm glad that they kind of
Angst is a flawless presentation of this movie. And from what I understand, I know when you were talking about it, there was apparently an opening scene
Gaspar Noé had
what's
seen
the
an
story?
opening. Gaspar Noé did a Cinefamily thing, and he said, look, when I was growing up, I saw this intro which gives you a little backstory of the character before he leaves the asylum,
right?
And what his crime was, which is just like, to him, was part of the best part of the story.
It is.
But then when it came out on, I think, a French Blu-ray or whatever, it was a TV version or something that had cut that out, and it just starts with the movie.
Exactly.
And he saw that, and it broke his heart. And so he came all the way from France to Cinefamily, and Cinefamily found a way to burn from a Laserdisc that intro, and then play the movie afterwards on 35. And he was so he introduced it, and so I've only seen it that way, and it made total sense to me. Like I couldn't imagine it without the intro.
Well, yeah, this Blu-ray has both the that version with the introduction, which is, I mean, it's a good like 5-6 minutes.
I think it's pretty key to who he was mentally.
And then after I watched the whole movie, I went back to see what the other version starts at, and it starts at such an odd spot that I'm like, no, you have to watch.
Yeah.
Because also the way that it's cinematic, like they almost sum up this guy's, it's a very unique movie about a killer that went to jail and we are following him as he gets out of jail and immediately feels the compulsion to just break into a house and kill people again.
Yeah.
Like that's his thing. It's kind of bordering on what they did with the Maniac remake, but not really, because the camera, it's not like we're his POV.
No,
the camera's
super,
right over his shoulder.
Or super low looking up at an impossible angle. An angle that literally looks impossible to pull off.
So in that sense, just cinematically, it's a really interesting movie. I know you would warn me that, it's pretty grim and fucked up and all that.
Well, also seeing it in a theater, I can't tell, home is different somewhere.
Yeah, no, it is, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was like following along the whole ride, like, because of, I think the narration helps a lot too, because the killer actually narrates everything that's going on, and him kind of having this compulsion, and he goes into this house to try to kill a bunch of people, and it like anything, it just doesn't go right at all. It's kind of like an addict like trying to get another fix, but everything that gets away, and the fix is never nearly as good as the first time. Yeah. So it's just a really fascinating movie, really well made.
And the DP, it's like this weird story, because the DP was an Oscar-winning Polish animator, and he directed these weird animations. I haven't seen them yet, but he was like this other totally. I think that's why the film just looks so incredible. This guy was like a totally different artist. Yeah. And so the director got this other guy who was like his own kind of award-winning artist to do these shots that make like Mean Streets by Scorsese look pale in comparison, because the camera is like at these incredibly weird angles, but like clearly attached to the body of the actor at times.
What's that called? When that? That weird. I know there's a technical term for it when the camera's like right in front of the actor, and it's like kind of.
Aronofsky did in Requiem. It's when you're literally basically wearing the dolly.
It's got to be the
actor's being
name.
Attached to basically like a
It's like a steady
like
cam,
the steady
but it's got to be like the name of like the hoist. Or
there probably is different names for the actual equipment that you use, but I don't. But in this one, it's different because somebody posted after I talked about it about a year ago. Somebody posted the design of the equipment that was used and showed me sketches, and it was really different. It was like nothing I'd ever seen with a camera.
Yeah. So for that alone, it is a grim, fucked up, almost true crime horror movie, because it's based on a real case. But I would liken it to somewhere between the original Maniac and the Maniac remake, at least in terms of style and like following a killer and kind of being in his, not necessarily on his side, but seeing it from his perspective. But you'll never see anything like it. Yeah, I've barely delved into the features, but there is a interview with that cinematographer. And the other thing I should mention about this movie is I really love the music. It was scored by a guy named Klaus Schulze, who actually is a member of Tangerine Dream.
That's why that's the other reason why I had a lot of acclaim.
And the score is just absolutely fantastic. Yeah. So it's a really dark, disturbing, gritty kind of movie.
It'd be in my top 5 Euro horror. Like Possession, those kind of movies that are my favorite types of horror. It's in there.
Yeah, and this is Gaspar Noé's favorite movie.
Yeah, and you'll see it all over, especially his first movie. If you watch this and then you watch I Stand Alone, between this and Kubrick, it's I Stand Alone. If you watch Kubrick movies and this, you go, oh, I see what he was trying to do. And they're great movies. Angst is better than anything Gaspar's done yet, but I like Gaspar's work, but it's an incredible thing.
Yeah, it's quite something. It's not the sort of thing you'd watch often.
And I think he only really made this movie. This guy.
This might be it. Yeah. So it's fascinating. I definitely recommend it.
Cool.
All righty.
I wonder if we have a guest.
We do. He's knocking on my door right now.
Let's go get him.
Hey, it's Michael Dougherty. Okay, and welcome back to the show. We're super excited because this is somebody we've had on the show way back. I think it was like episode 34 or something.
Like 2 years ago.
So it's been quite a while, and I got to see a slightly early screening of Krampus, and I very excitedly messaged this person to tell him how awesome I thought it was. Welcome back to the show, Michael Dougherty.
Hi.
Hi,
guys.
And congratulations. We were so stoked that a movie like Krampus did as well as it did, as I'm sure you're pleased that it did as well as it did as well.
Did it?
Okay.
I didn't notice.
Dude rolled up in a limo.
I don't care about these things. It's just about the art. It's just about the process of creating. No, I'm kidding.
I'm sure.
My God.
I'm sure. But also, one of the things I did right after I saw the movies, I immediately bought the, the coffee table Art of Krampus book, because I already had the Trick or Treat one. And I don't know, just with movies in general, I'm always fascinated by the storyboards and kind of like the production art and that stuff. And this was just something that, I guess the best way to put it is I never knew Christmas could be quite that sinister. Like little, fun toys that we got as gifts, and it's like, oh, there's a nice little evil twist to it. That's cool. So I strongly recommend picking up The Art of Krampus as well, because there's some cool stuff in there.
Yeah, I think that Jack in the Box is the most terrifying creation of the year.
Yes.
Like,
Of the year.
I think it's an incredible thing.
It's
Thank you.
beautiful.
The scale of it is what disturbs me. That it's this little box, but then it's this big fat slug-like thing.
Well,
it's
also
just-
the first time you see it
Yeah,
in that
it's-
context, not to
it's pretty
spoil
old,
it,
yeah.
but it's kind of fun. We have a lot of fun topics that Michael specifically wanted to talk about, which I think is going to be cool.
They're awesome.
No,
I'm
because
excited.
because a lot of times we'll ask people like, "Oh, what do you want to riff on?" And so, most people are like, "Oh, I don't care, whatever."
I'll just talk about my movie.
But you were excited. You're like, "Let's do myths. Let's do paranormal. Let's talk about
Well, that's the
our
stuff-
personal experiences."
That's the stuff that honestly inspires me.
Yeah.
Like that's my excuse for, I think, making horror movies or comic book movies, is that they allow you to explore these topics that are supposedly potentially real, or things. We live in a strange world where people have had strange experiences, which gave rise to theories like telekinesis, which led to the mutants and X-Men. So, or horror movies based on true stories. For me, they're all excuses to sort of explore the paranormal and the supernatural, because it's fun to think that we live in a world where these things might exist.
Right.
Do you ever ask your cast stories like that when you're on set? Like, hey, you guys ever had any real paranormal?
I ask random strangers.
I'm just curious. Yeah. You've got these comedians. I'm looking at that cast and going, they probably tell some good stories.
Yeah, I would think so.
For me, it's a fun way to break the ice
Yeah.
with people,
Yeah.
and talk about something other than dumb reality shows or politics, which are just divisive and also stupid. It's something that is oddly personal but fun, and I find that everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Since we've been doing Blumhouse.com, we've been kind of pushing into realms of folklore and supernatural and things like that on the horror side. And I've gotten really interested in local legends, things that they very much define one area, and for everyone who grew up in that area, they're like, oh yeah, we know the Bunny Man. Oh yeah,
Of course.
we totally get him.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've totally gotten into, and researching those and finding out, this one tiny town, 30,000 people in it, but every single person in that town knows the story of, Lizard Boy or whatever it is. So yeah, fascinating.
Everybody tends to have at least one experience, and so getting the person who made the unfortunate mistake of sitting next to me on the plane to talk about that and bare their soul is really refreshing. And one of my funnier, stranger stories, I'll just jump right on in.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
But
go
I
right in.
just on a whim, I remember I took a cab ride home from the airport one day and didn't feel like staring at my phone anymore, so I did the old-fashioned thing where you strike up a conversation with the cab driver. And so I said, have you ever had a paranormal experience? And I just
No lead-in.
no lead in, jumped right into it again. And he was like, no. Well, and that's always how it goes. They think about it for a second, and then there's something. And he says, yeah, there were a lot of ghost stories in the town that I grew up in, and we just started talking about it. And he goes, and I've had weird coincidences in my life. And we talked about that, and we didn't quite get to finish the conversation. He dropped me off at home, but we left it off talking about coincidences and synchronicities and things like that. And so then about a week later, I had to fly back out on another trip, and I call a cab, and who happens to show up? It's the exact same cab driver.
That's cool.
And he got out and he goes, hello again. I said, hello. Is this one of those things, one of those moments you were talking about? He goes, yes, it is. But he had no idea who he was picking up. It wasn't
Right.
And again, those are the little things. For me, they happen on different scales, but that was just a fun little blip in the matrix.
And but that's a fun point you make, is you chose not to look at your phone and ignore this. I think people miss a lot of what interesting things they could learn in life and people they can interact with just by being kind of fixated on what's going on Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that. It's good to kind of put that down. And talk to people again.
Yeah, you have to disconnect from the matrix. It's important too, and I think that the more you seek out weird shit, the more you find it, potentially.
I always
Right,
think
right.
about how many inventions were invented because somebody was bored. And no one's bored anymore. You're never bored.
That's true.
Yeah,
So what would happen,
I have to create times to allow myself to be
Yeah.
bored.
Yeah.
But it is important.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where culture really comes from, is boredom.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we find ways to amuse ourselves and tell stories and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, we could always come back to the questions later since we're already in the thick of this. I mean, I know hearing you talk about things like trick or treat and Krampus and stuff like that, you seem to be kind of a history buff. You go back and look at the origins of Halloween, for example, and like, wow, there's some really scary, fucked up shit involving this. So even going back to when you were a kid, was there anybody in your family that like an uncle or something that told you kind of the creepy stories about town? Or like, where did you grow up? Like, what were some of the kind of, because I wanted to get into like local urban legends, like Becca said, because I'm from Long Island, and there's like 2 or 3 very specific ones that have haunted me forever since
have-
then.
Oh, Long Island's full of them.
Yeah,
Long
there's a
Island and
lot.
Michigan are some of the weird. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a whole. I'm from like Appalachian Mountains, and we. Have
Oh, you guys are bizarre.
I know, and I even,
That's Pumpkinhead
I
territory.
told Dave, my husband, on the way out the door tonight that I was like, every single story I tell is just going to make Elric make fun of me for being a redneck.
Yeah.
So it's true.
You said it, not me. Self-proclaimed redneck.
So what about you? Where'd you grow up? And
I grew up in a Columbus, Ohio. Very, it's not a small town, and it's like the perfect sized, big little city. Great place to grow up because it is just prototypical Middle America. It felt like Amblinville,
yeah,
in a sense, and it was so run of the mill that we were used as a testing ground for new products, like McDonald's or Pizza Hut would try all their new products there.
Oh, wow. You got the McRib like years before everybody else.
Well, it was weird because it was sort of growing up. It felt like it was suburban and normal, but then one day we're told, okay, all third graders report to the cafeteria, and we're all lined up at the cafeteria tables, and we're the ones trying Smurf cereal for the first time.
Oh, you got the Smurf berry?
We were the guinea pigs for like
Smurf berries.
Smurf cereal, and it was weird because like we were divided up into sections, and some of the kids got brighter Smurf berries than so they were testing different shades of colors and flavors, and it had this weird science fiction feel to it, sort of Orwellian, just seeing all these little Catholic school kids in their uniforms and people in lab coats walking around letting us try different kinds of cereal and asking us sincerely, children, which of this chemically manufactured cereals with cartoon characters on them do you like best and why? It's just weird.
You're also close to the Kellogg factory, right? It's in Battle Creek, Michigan. Isn't too far from Ohio. That's where all of Kellogg's and all of those cereal brands
Fuck,
are
do
made.
you know that?
Because I went there once. I went to Battle Creek, and that's all they have there.
But I mean, other than, I mean, that was just a weird little thing I grew up with. But yeah, we had our own local folklore and urban legends. And, in my neighborhood, we had an area called Clay Mountain, which was just really like, an undeveloped part of the suburbia that I grew up in, the little community. And our little suburbia used to be, I mean, it wasn't something the kids made up. It used to be where it was called Sharon Woods, and it used to be where a lot of Native Americans were. And so all the kids swore that they found arrowheads at Clay Mountain and that there were Indian bones buried in Clay Mountain. But that's where we started getting to some really blurry, creepy local folklore.
Did you ever have a creepy Christmas, or was that something you discovered a lot later? Because I didn't discover the Krampus myth till like a couple years ago. I think I read about it for the first time.
No, I've always found Christmas a little bit creepy.
No, we always had the Christmas witch.
See, no,
And we we have decorations for her. My mom, you hang them up in your kitchen.
Was your family Italian?
No, we're very Irish.
No, because there's an Italian Christmas witch.
Oh yeah, there is.
Yeah.
No, but we are like hardcore Irish. But no, we have the Christmas witch. But I mean,
Cool.
we have decorations for it and everything. She has just as many decorations as Santa.
But here's the thing. That's what we've actually forgotten, or we've been brainwashed into believing never existed, is that Christmas was originally a creepy holiday. Christmas and Halloween were really back to back. We get upset because we see Halloween or Christmas decorations show up before Halloween's over, right? So by the time November 1st hits, you've got Santa Claus and reindeer everywhere at the stores. Old school Christmas started on November 1st. So Halloween was sort of just the transition into the Christmas holidays, which lasted from November really all the way into February. But stories about Christmas goblins and witches and ghosts that was the norm.
And when you say the norm, that's like Austria, German, or
Old European
old
Christmas.
European.
Old European Christmas was a spooky time of year. And again, it all goes back to, and it almost is getting to the point where it's almost cliche. It's like, yeah, because of the pagans. Like, that's where it started. So the winter solstice celebrations were really decadent and loud and a little scary, but they were filled with stories of monsters.
Yeah, the Christmas witch, she brought candy, but she would also punish. It was very much like Santa, where he brings toys or coal.
The Italian witch disembowels you. So
Oh my God, we did an article about that.
the Italian Christmas witch disembowels you.
We did an article about that on Blumhouse, and I was proofing it, and I was like, "Are you fucking serious?
Wait, is
What
there
is
an
this
alternate
fucked up
with her?
shit?"
Like, can you do anything right by her, or does she just come to disembowel?
No,
you?
it's
Naughty kids.
It's the naughty kids.
Naughty
That is,
Wow.
it's, yeah.
I'm so using that tonight on my show. Hey, you don't want the naughty witch.
Someone out there's started the script.
This year
Wow.
we started because by the end of Christmas I wanted those decorations down. Like the day afterwards, I was like, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
So I told Marnie that Larry Claus, which is Santa's brother,
Oh, right.
I told them this at Christmas dinner, and
Funny.
it was like Marnie was like, "Yeah, Larry Claus is coming." That the day after Christmas, Larry Claus comes and takes down all the Christmas decorations. He's like Santa's cleaner at the end of the holiday, and you have to leave him a thing of scotch.
And you got like your daughter pumped about this.
Yeah,
She's
she
like,
was
I'm
like-
gonna help Larry Claus take everything
'Cause
down.
we told her that
Until
Larry,
suddenly Larry Claus becomes very real.
I know. And-
Suddenly, it's a Vince Vaughn movie. Harry Claus.
Well, Larry left her a present too. He left her My Little Pony tattoos, and so
nice.
that was the thing. Is like Larry comes, he takes everything down. You get another present.
I
wow.
like that.
Larry's a creep. But when was the first time you actually heard any kind of Krampus myth, like anything related to a demon coming or some sort of, dark entity like that?
It was the early aughts, 2003, 2004, I think. Back when we used to forward emails to each other if we thought they were funny, like pre-social media.
Yeah,
Man, I forgot about that.
I think the
totally
most
forgot to.
I think the
Email
most we
chains.
had, before Facebook was it was Friendster.
God.
Yeah.
But I remember you would get some emailed postcards of Krampus, because that was a big tradition, was they would send out Krampus cards in Europe. And so he started, I feel like that's when he slowly started to crawl back into our reality. And then it just snowballed from there. And then there was a book that got published that had compiled all those postcards. And then more and more websites started popping up. But
It's funny how there's no real fixed. It doesn't feel like there's a fixed vision of that character.
There isn't.
in lore. It's
No.
like skinny black goat-looking thing versus the big creature you had in the film.
well, that's why you never actually see Krampus in the movie.
Yeah.
He's wearing a mask,
Yeah.
so that I didn't want to. I wanted to disguise what he really looked like, because I really loved the idea that no one knows what he really looks like.
I've worked with Luke Walker. I know what he looks like.
But any of those depictions, of Krampus you've seen in the postcards, or any of the hundreds of people who've made their own Krampus suits at festivals and parades, they all might be right. Who knows?
Yeah, and they're all very different. Too.
You know how,
Yeah.
like, when you're little, most of us have that one. I've one firm memory where you feel like you actually saw Santa. Like that one, I remember seeing a shadow walking along the wall, and like I just in my brain, and that kept me going another couple years. I'd love to know if like Bavarian children ever had like witnesses of the Krampus, like
yeah.
something darker, and I would
I'm
love
sure.
to know that. That'd
I'm
be
sure. Yeah, there's got to
bizarre.
be one.
Yeah, one crazy kid.
Yeah,
Or somebody who saw your movie and then did it to their kid.
yeah.
Dressed up like that. To
But I mean, like, that's what's so great about folklore, and especially when you dig and you try and find the truth behind that folklore.
Yeah.
And you just it's like a rabbit hole. You keep falling deeper and deeper. So the notion of doing a scary Christmas movie, leading to the discovery that Christmas, well, before we turned it into the monster that it is, was a scary, spooky holiday, which was closer in spirit to Halloween than what we have, and then that road leading to Krampus. It's fun to explore the myths and legends that inspire our favorite movies. I mean, even Wes Craven talking about Nightmare on Elm Street and how he was inspired by an actual incident where I think it was a Filipino kid had insomnia
Right.
and swore and would not refused to go to sleep because he knew he would die.
It's
Yeah.
actually a disease that they termed. It's like Asian sleeping sickness syndrome, and it was a group from an entire village that all of the men from this village like suffered this thing in unison, where they swore that if they went to sleep they would die, and many of them actually did, and it was like they would have heart attacks in their sleep from fright or what the hell ever. But it was an actual like syndrome that got classified.
Right. That's what I love about horror or science fiction, fantasy, is they give us stories to allow us to explore these ideas.
And it's funny, sometimes you don't know, like you brought up the Nightmare on Elm Street thing, like that was part of Wes Craven's inspiration, but another was he had told a story that he had a very vague memory of
I love this
looking
one.
out his window.
It related to your Santa story.
And there was a guy that walked down the street, he had a hat on, like the fedora hat, and just stopped
and the sweater,
and looked up and stared at him, and that was his image for Freddy Krueger. So it was
no, he looked up and then he ran away and he hid, and
then
any normal human would have walked on. Right. And he looked out, and the guy's still staring.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what.
I mean, that is killer.
By the way, Wes tells the story much better than you do.
Yes.
He does. He just paces it out really well because he just paints the image of a little kid peeking out of his bedroom window, and then in the distance, there's this vagrant.
And that's where we're all formative. That when we're young, we hear stories, we hear ghost stories, we hear whatever it is, and it all kind of gets jumbled up in our brains. And then when we tell someone else, it's already changed. And that's my favorite thing. My least favorite thing about the movie Urban Legend, which never worked as a movie. It was totally. I always longed for a real version of Urban Legends, like a movie about real urban legends. When I saw that film, but it's the one thing they always forget is just how these stories change. How you're actually constantly morphing the thing by every time you tell someone. The Chinese whispers element that you can almost imagine a creature change in every version, like Freddy would change in every version. Every time somebody told the other person about Freddy, he could look a little different to that person or something like that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
That's why I've tried to use that to rationalize our obsession with remakes and reboots. Yeah. Just the whole idea that we're trying to pick the stories and archetypes and the new folklore to continue on into the future. We're unfortunately the generation that has to go through it, and maybe the kids after us will have more original stories. We'll see. But it is all part of the same tradition of folklore, just retelling the same stories and changing them.
I think especially Jason, of all those characters, I think that's why Jason kept going, because people didn't care if the movies, they just were like, oh, I wonder what the next one's going to do.
Well, it kept getting more bonkers as it went.
Yeah, it's like, and it could keep going forever. It's one of those stories. It's just like hits on just this base thing, impulse in us, I think. But it's interesting. Do you remember like any key ghost stories you were told that scared you as a kid? Like somebody like told you that? I assume most people have.
No, but related to Rob's question earlier, a combination of the two, we did have weird things happen in our town. There was a really interesting incident in the 1980s. It was a case called, it was Tina Resch was her name, and she lived like half a mile from me, and her family swore that they were afflicted with poltergeists. And this made like national news. It was a big deal for a week in Columbus. And they did an interview with her, and in the middle of the interview, like a phone just flew across the room.
Wow.
And like it got caught on camera, and like lamps falling, all the classic stuff. I mean, it was a traditional haunting, but that captivated our attention for a good while. And then of course it became a very tragic reality show ending for Tina, I think. But like that was a local story that was pretty scary. My dad was a cop, so there was a lot of there was stuff that would come out of that.
Would he tell you very like graphic things that he dealt with at work? Because we didn't we have a guest on once that said that, like his dad would tell him everything.
Well, I have mentioned that before because my mom was a funeral director,
right?
So I got like all of the stories, like when the bodies came in parts or had been sitting in the sun for days.
It's possible as Michael, but we had a cop. We had somebody whose dad. I think it was an Irish guest, one of our Irish guests.
Of course, there was an Irish cop.
Yeah, I think Irish beat cop. He drank a little too much, and but no, it could have been you. I don't know. Somebody who talked about looking at photographs with their father from like crime scenes.
I only heard one story from my dad that was really graphic and disturbing, and involved him entering a house and finding the corpses of these children that the mother who had died, and the mother could not let go of them.
Oh wow!
Literally. Yeah. So that was a dark one. It's like, wow. The more I think about it, my childhood was kind of messed up.
That's why true crime is always so surreal. There's always images or ideas, or even you go back to Black Dahlia, you go, that's an unreal image, just as an image. Black Dahlia.
Oh, the Black Dahlia.
It almost doesn't make sense.
Oh, I had a funny
Out of
Black
body.
Dahlia story where I got into another cab story, but a cab driver picks me up, driving me downtown, and just long awkward silence in the car, and the cab driver then just goes, "You ever hear about the story about the Black Dahlia?" I'm like,
Yeah.
and like checking the door to make sure it's
never
it's still
caught it.
unlocked. Like, yeah, because happened nearby here.
Yeah.
You want to take it? I'm like, no, I'm good. Let's just get me to the restaurant.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, skip that part.
Have you ever been to the Museum of Death here in Los Angeles?
It's a little much.
It is. It's it's funny. I went with a friend of mine that was married to somebody else. It was just like, oh, let's go to the Museum of Death.
Yeah.
And when we both walked out, I was like, I'm so glad that this would break up any relationship. So I'm glad that I'm here instead of your husband, and that you're here instead of my girlfriend or whatever, because it would have been over.
You're definitely a brave soul going in and making your way through it, because it definitely forces you to look at things
Some
that
pretty horrific things.
But
yeah.
the death tour that they do in LA is awesome. Like
The tour? I've
the
never
tour.
done that.
I can't
No.
recommend it enough. It's like a double-decker bus tour, and it's only on Saturdays because I guess not that many people come to LA and are like, I want to take the death tour. But you literally, it's like a true crime tour, and so you're going around Hollywood looking at these sites, and some of them are just like where celebrities' last houses were. Like this is Bela Lugosi's last
or it's
house.
where they died.
Yeah, or it's where they died. And some of it's more scandalous. Like there's a midway, it's about a 3-hour tour, and midway through you take a bathroom break at the bathroom in Beverly Hills where George Michael got caught with the other person.
And his ghost still haunts it.
Yeah, I know. And you can go into the actual stall and take pictures
great.
and everything. It's fun. But
Okay.
the rest of it, it's all very kind of Hollywood true crimey.
Yeah.
Like, this is where this body was found, or this is where this celebrity lived before this happened. And it's fun. I mean, I shouldn't say that it's fun, but it's
No, you can say it. You can say it's fun.
fascinating. It's a
You're allowed to say it's fun.
I think places that were like kind of like non-cultures that drew lots of people, transient people with big ideas for dreams. A lot of people slip into things like prostitution and certain jobs where they can disappear. And
Podcasting.
Podcasting's
Yes.
the worst. Yeah, you're in somebody's living room. But that book, Devil in the White City, that I know it's eventually being adapted, but I remember reading that and I'd lived in Chicago for a little while. And it was fascinating. And American Horror Story technically is a little bit about that. The hotel, but H.H. Holmes, he sets up there, and just back then you couldn't find these people. Your daughter would move to Chicago, and if you didn't get a letter from her for a while, that wasn't that big a deal.
That's a really good story.
And then these people just disappear, and he was just taking those people, and
that's another fascination is the way these urban legends and bits of folklore vary from region to region. You're just talking about Los Angeles, and the folklore and myth and ghost stories we're building are all around scandalous Hollywood, tragedies and actors overdosing here and there, or the classic is, and I think it's actually being turned into a movie now. The actress who took a swan dive off the Hollywood sign.
Peg Entwistle.
Yeah.
Her only film that she was ever in is this phenomenal film called 13 Women.
All right. You
which
talked about it. Yeah.
It's an awesome movie. It's the only movie she ever did, and she took a swan dive off the sign shortly thereafter.
And I mean,
and yet nothing's known about her. So the people trying to write that are going to write. It's going to be complete fiction. Because I remember early on hearing pitches, and it was like, there was very little known about her.
They know a decent amount.
It was all biographical, like
it's
the journal.
all kind of like things that they had to go research. But she was living on Beechwood Avenue with her uncle at the time, which is really close to Dave Scow's house, actually. And it's still there. And I mean, it's just.
Is it on the tour?
It is on the tour,
Yeah.
which is how I learned all this. It's just like a tiny little 2-bedroom bungalow, which at the time, was considered to be a very tiny, like, LA hovel. And now you look at it, and it's like a $4 million house because it's on Beechwood. But yeah, it's just like a small little house. And she was staying there with her uncle. And for some reason, one night, she took a dive off the side.
Oh, because I heard she was depressed that she didn't get a role. It was a classic LA actress
And she
thing.
told her uncle she was going to go take a walk, and she walked up to the sign and took her shoes off for some reason. I remember that as being.
What about George Sanders? I remember
That's for drama.
Drama. She took her shoes off.
George Sanders. I had this book, Hollywood Babylon. This is such a great book by Kenneth Anger. But George Sanders, who was in, he's one of the characters in the old Batman TV show, but he was a classic, 1950s actor. His suicide note just said, "I was bored."
Right. Yeah.
And it's just like goodbye.
That's great.
That's like one of my favorite things to do is you either move if you move to a new city, or even if you're just visiting, is trying to find the local ghost stories, and because almost every city tends to have some sort of death tour.
You got to go to Savannah if you haven't been.
I know. I've heard. I mean, Savannah's on the list.
Savannah's so good for that.
New Orleans.
They're both so good.
Yeah.
They both claim to be the most haunted city. They're both bullshit. But Savannah, I did
Rob
feel...
believes. Don't mess.
Well, no, I really did feel there's a darker feeling to Savannah for such a beautiful place that I always felt slightly uncomfortable at night.
Yeah.
And, I didn't have anything directly personally, but, I heard amazing stories while I was there. I think you would love it. Everyone owns a ghost tour company down there.
Right.
It's like multiple tour companies, yeah. But, yeah, it's interesting.
That's cool.
Well, the reason I believe is because it's funny. I've been really trying to analyze it now as an adult because I have very vague memories as a kid of really fucked up things, but I think it's kind of like.
Are we going to get really dark?
We're gonna
getting-
no.
How dark are we going to get?
No. I mean, because Elric was saying before, like, oh, everyone has a memory of maybe seeing Santa or something like that. For me, and I've talked about this on the show before, I've suffered from sleep paralysis or old hag syndrome and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of fucked up shit while I'm sort of asleep.
The Nightmare movie,
Yes.
which I really enjoyed.
Yes.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Which is horrific for me to watch because
I've had that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think back to a lot of instances where I think it could be a ghost or something supernatural or paranormal, whatever. And then now I rationalize it in my head as like, maybe it was just like a sleep paralysis sort of deal
Sure.
or something that was kind of in consciousness, out of consciousness.
And also, when you're a kid, fuzzy memories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally,
Right.
totally. Yeah, but you remember, like I remember perfectly. I lived in a decent neighborhood, but not that decent, where there's some people kind of running around. The reason I love living on a second floor is because I was always obsessed with that moment in Salem's Lot where the kids,
Banging the
Banging
window.
Banging on the
Yeah.
window.
and I would always be, for whatever reason, the curtain in my bedroom when I was on a ground floor would never fully go all the way down, and I was always obsessed with somebody looking in. And I have a very clear memory of what looked like a pale junkie, which probably was a pale junkie in my backyard, staring straight at me as I slept. And you're in bed and you kind of can't move because you're in that sleep paralysis phase. You're like, fuck, is that really creepy dude looking at me right now, or is that just a dream? I'm just going to turn this way and hope that it goes away.
Somewhere there's this albino junkie telling the story of this time he freaked out this little kid.
Yeah, he's like,
It's
"Man,
amazing
that was
what-
high as fuck."
So you're still not 100% sure.
No, but that's the wonder. Like that's the weird. That's part of my horror obsession. Is like, no, I'm not. I'm not at all. I want to rationalize it
Right.
and say that that's what it was.
No, 'cause I
can't.
had moments like that as a kid, and then there are things where there was one really interesting moment when I was a kid, and to this day, every now and then I'll ask my sister, "Did that happen?" She goes, "Yep, I was
Okay.
there," and it's such a small thing, but when I think I was around 11 and my sister would have been 9, and we were just playing in the living room. And we saw the garage door, the door that leads to the garage, the knob started turning as if it was locked. And so I just assumed, oh, Dad's home from work, and someone locked the door, so I'll go open it for him. Open up the door to the garage, there's nobody there, and the garage is shut. There's nobody in there. But my sister and I both remember the doorknob turning back and forth completely. And like you, it's one of those moments where I'm like, well, maybe I was just young and had too much sugar and misremembered something, or
Right.
I dreamt it. But I remember as recently as 2 years ago, I asked my sister, did that really happen? She goes, yes, it happened. I remember. Stop asking. So, and it's just one of those weird things when you have somebody to confirm the moment, you know that there's something else going on.
I think that's why I found The Entity so scary, the movie, and maybe the true story, because there's all these people who are also witnessing it.
Right.
So if it was just her, you'd go, oh, she's crazy. But then all these people would be around when something happens, and that makes
Which
you go, whoa.
is a film based on actual events,
the actual
supposedly.
event.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
That idea.
I got to tell a funny story that I heard on this Halloween that just passed. My friend Josh McKevin, I bumped into him at a party. And we were just chit chatting about siblings and weird shit that we would do to our siblings. And he told a story about, I guess his sister was like terrified of dolls, possibly because of Chucky and Child's Play and all that. But apparently she had a huge collection of dolls. And what he would do is when she wasn't in her room, he would go and grab one and just put it on her bed.
I would do the same thing.
God.
I did too.
So she
I would turn my sister's dolls' heads all the way around, so only
Yes.
she only saw
Oh
them.
my
She would
God.
wake up in the morning and only the backs of their
My
heads.
kids
That's
are
so
going to
creepy.
torment each
What a
other.
great
Yeah.
image.
Probably.
This is going to be so cool.
If you saw a whole row of dolls with just the backs of their head,
She would wake up to that.
terrifying.
But
yeah.
here's the best part. He never told her that he did it. So for years, she would throw her dolls in the closet, and then he would pull them out and turn their heads and put them on the bed and stuff like that.
He deserves an award.
He
Yeah,
does.
that's
Because
amazing.
then he said the punchline of the story is that I guess, like, you know, him and his girlfriend and her boyfriend were all at, like, some fucking, like, baseball game earlier this year. And he's like, remember when I used to take your dolls and put it on the bed? And she literally was, like, silent and started to tear up. She was like, you did that? It was like, for years, she was psychologically damaged.
man.
Wait, you did that to me? I had no idea. I thought I was losing my mind.
I'm
my
sending him a
gosh.
prize.
And I was like,
Wow.
holy shit, that is some fucking, that is some fucked up shit right there.
Wow.
Maybe people can write to us their most fucked up memory or
Yeah, I
the
would
most
love
fucked
to
up
hear
thing.
that. I would love to hear that.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
genius.
You know what I want to ask about? Because all right, so there's a few urban legends and kind of like myths that we had in Long Island, but some of them are ones that, you know, throughout the years you ask other people about. It's like, oh yeah, we had that too, but our version was that. So
Right.
just going around the room, we had Mary Hatchet, and as you know, I lived in the 5 towns, Long Island. And a few towns over, it was like kind of like the back of Lawrence Hewlett area. There was this house. You know, it's all like really expensive houses and mansions and stuff like that. I think Adam West lived back there because there was a giant AW on his house. But there's one house in that particularly rich area that is completely closed off with a fence, and it's sunk into the ground. Like literally, you could just see the top of the chimney. And I went to it a million times because it's like, got nothing better to do. Let's go to Mary Hatchet's house. And that was the myth. It was like, that was the house that belonged to Mary Hatchet. And it was like, Mary Hatchet was some girl that went nuts and picked up a hatchet and killed her entire family. And if you say her name 5 times in the mirror, she'll appear behind you.
So somebody merged Lizzie Borden and
Yes.
Bloody Mary.
But you know,
basically.
as a teenager,
Yeah.
you know, that hasn't traveled that much yet, it's like, holy shit, like that's. And then you watch that movie Candyman, and you're like, wait a minute, that's
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of familiar, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess like, yeah, I mean, you just said Lizzie Borden, but has everyone heard a version of that, of the Mary Hatchet?
We had the foundation, and the foundation, it was, and I mean, this is Virginia, so everything's very colonial. And it was like an old Civil War story about some guy who went crazy and killed his family, but the only thing left of the property, and it was like way, way out in the middle of Clark County, the only thing left was an actual foundation. And so that's why all the kids called it the foundation. And mostly you would just go there and drink beers and have sex and practice amateur satanic witchcraft or whatnot. But everybody swore that it was still haunted by this Civil War guy who killed his whole family. So, yeah. But it was just literally like a pile of stones in a semicircle. That was all that was left of this original colonial house.
Yeah, I mean, New Zealand I mean, I grew up in America too, and I had I've told it before on the show, and I'll tell it later if it comes up. But you know, a very real ghost story in our family that my mother had told us that she fully believed, and so but didn't believe in ghosts, which made it 10,000 times scarier. I mean, that's the thing about if somebody tells you I do not believe in ghosts, and then tells you a story because I have no way to explain it, and you're just like, oh my god, it terrified me for years. But in New Zealand, I don't know if did you shoot all of Krampus there, or just some of it?
No, the whole thing.
Okay, so I don't know if anyone told you about the Taniwha.
No.
So the Taniwha is kind of the only, I mean, there's lots of myths, obviously, of Maori culture. There's so many different myths, but the key one, and I'm really shocked there's never been a real film about it yet, but the Taniwha is kind of a lizard-like looking thing, long, protruding tongue, kind of lives in dark crevices, vicious seas, waters, and it steals, usually it's women, to take away to be their kind of brides or, possessed. But then there's also, other sides of it, which is positive. Just like all these myths, somebody will say, but it also could have been a positive creature thing. But I never felt like it was a creepy, it was not something told to my culture, but then I'm a white guy, growing up in New Zealand, that it wasn't really something to scare us. In Maori culture, it might have been a lot more of a reality of their culture, But the Taniwha, it's made fun of in a lot of New Zealand films, but no one's ever actually tackled it as like this horror thing. Because it's they believe in it.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that it's every culture has a boogeyman.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just universal, and a lot of times they're used to either keep young girls in line or children especially. I mean, it's just something. I mean, my parents would tell me that a monster was coming for me if I didn't eat my vegetables. We have to use these fairy tale creatures to sort of keep the next generation in line.
I remember, at camp when I was a kid, and it reminded me of this when I was researching the topic today, and I spent hours researching this, and I can't find anything about it online, so maybe I dreamt the name, but we used to be told about this guy named Kupakea, and Kupakea was this Indian who had been accused of murder but didn't actually do it, and so the town folk burned him alive, and this is on Sharando Indian ground, which was in our town, and supposedly he was now an ash ghost. He was like solid ash.
I like that image,
and he could fly in the wind and everything, but if you got separated from the camp or walked away on your own, he would appear to you as solid ash, and the big thing was you had to keep your mouth closed, because if you screamed, he would send ash into your lungs and it would burn you from the inside out and you'd suffocate.
Cool. I'd watch that.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a great story, and it was when I was at camp, everybody was scared shitless of Kupakea.
Camp stories are the best.
And, but I spent so long Googling Kupakea, trying every single spelling I could think of. And I got nothing today. So
Try
maybe
Tatanka.
I don't know. Somebody from the region, tell me Kupakea. He has to exist because he scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. It kept me like close to the campfire.
Oh, those are so fun.
They're so creative too. I mean, that's a very creative myth right there.
Yeah.
Like something of ash that could move in the wind, very, very true to their beliefs and get inside you. Yeah.
Favorite series of books is I think it started with Weird New York, maybe. But there's a different one for each state.
Oh, I have several of those. Those
yeah,
are so fun. And
like
it's
Weird
just like
New York,
weird blank.
Yeah, Weird California. I mean, it's a great reason to travel, if anything.
Yeah.
But those are filled with amazing stories like that.
I always liked the contemporary ones too. Like I remember in college, I don't know, I think they do this in a number of colleges, but during exams weeks, we had what they called the Midnight Screams. Did you guys have these at your colleges?
No.
Okay, Virginia Tech, we had the Midnight Screams. And during exam week, every night of exam week at midnight, everybody on the entire campus would raise their windows and scream out their window as loud as they could. And I actually have video of it that I taped for my mom because she didn't believe it. So somewhere I have like an old VHS like super tape that's got this on it. But the rumor at Virginia Tech was that 1 year during midnight
somebody
screams,
got murdered.
Somebody got murdered and nobody heard the screams because it was at the stroke of midnight. And then I was telling this years later when I was in grad school at a completely different college, and everybody was like, "Oh no, that happened at my college." And I was like, "No, it happened at mine, guys." But it was just like this rumor that we all knew, the midnight scream murder, and no one heard her screams because everyone else was screaming.
Yeah.
Well, even though like there could be all stories and we could not believe in things, but I'll say the one thing that always feels true is when if you've ever been to a space where you know nothing about it, but you feel this like it feels like, oh god, this feels like oppressive. What's wrong? And then somebody tells you the history of the place, and it has murder, and you go, well, I didn't know that before, and yet
you
I
felt it,
and I've seen that multiple times, and it's hard to deny.
My I'm hoping I'm remembering this story correctly. Otherwise, I'm just adding to misinformation.
Butcher away.
If I remember correctly, it sounds like a friend of a friend. But
best stories
again. But who knows? Either way, it's a good story.
Yeah.
So a friend of my writing partner moves to LA, and I think he's a young DP, and he rents a house in the hills, and he and his girlfriend just can't sleep, just have insomnia from the first night. They just can't sleep, and this goes on for a while, and then he's taking his garbage out, and classic horror movie scene probably at minute 18, where the neighbor's like, "You know what happened there, right?"
Oh,
classic, right? Yeah. And he goes, "No." He goes, "You should go search on the internet for your address."
Oh God.
So
worst thing you could hear.
they do it. They search, and they are living in the Wonderland Murders house.
Oh my God! Don't they have to tell things like that? When
I don't.
No. They have to tell you when you buy it.
He's renting.
You don't have to tell shit when you're renting.
I was going to say, because when we were buying a place, there was a place that we walked into, and as soon as we walked in, our realtor looks at us and goes, "I have to disclose the man died in this house 30 days ago, but he died of old age in his sleep, and I have to tell you." And then we toured the whole house, but it was like this very kind of like legal disclaimer.
No, that's a little different than looking
the Wonderland house. That's fucked up.
because they were looking at scenes of images from the murders, and they're sitting in the living room.
Oh my
Man.
god.
Well, and also, if you believe in, if you believe in ghosts at all, a lot of people, spiritual people, will say that not all spirits are ghosts. That most spirits pass on to this other place, but the ones that are here are ones that are trapped because they weren't prepared or couldn't kind of comprehend death or understand. And so, if you deal with, say, a murder like that, where somebody sneaks in the back door and you're all sleeping or whatnot, that would just be eerie as fuck.
Or, I do think, personally, I like to believe that there's just areas of science we haven't figured out yet. I am a skeptic. I'm like,
I'm a skeptic.
It's the Mulder poster. You want to believe because it just makes life so much more interesting. And I just think there are things we haven't figured out. This one more story. My old roommate, Sean Ashmore.
Hey, Sean.
Yes. So, and Sean gave me permission to share this story.
Good.
We're driving down the 10 freeway here in LA. Basically, we almost get into a horrifying accident, like just inches away from death. So shaken, we have to pull off to the side of the road and just sort of collect ourselves and just thank God we were still alive. Basically, a semi-truck. We almost rear-ended a car that had stalled in the fast lane and we had to veer around it and almost got sideswiped by a truck. Anyway, almost died. And as we were collecting our breath, his phone rings. And Sean has an identical twin brother, Aaron Ashmore, who was in Toronto at the time. And Sean picks up the phone and says, "Aaron, what's up?" And Aaron goes, "I had to call you. I had a nightmare that you died in a terrible car accident, and I had to call to make sure you were okay."
That is really.
And I'm sorry. I understand coincidence, but that's too much of a coincidence.
Yeah.
Well, especially because so many people have thought that about twins.
Yeah, and plus it's identical twins, which only makes it more likely.
Twins are just creepy in general.
Yeah, but that was just one of those moments, and again, it was one of those moments where every now and then I had to think, okay, did that actually happen? And I'll ask Sean, and he goes, "It happened. I remember," and it was all the proof I needed to know that there are just things we haven't figured out.
Yeah.
And that we might never be able to quantify, but doesn't mean we don't have to believe.
Right.
Look into it.
So here's a question for you guys. When guys are adolescents, you guys have slumber parties, right?
Oh, yes, we do.
No. Because I'm wondering.
No, dudes don't do that. No.
At girl slumber parties, there is this fantastic thing that you do between like
Light as a
4th
feather, stiff as a board.
That's one of them. Midnight Man is one. There's
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary. But
Yeah.
Midnight Man's the one that I remember the most because that one has like set rules and you have to start the game at exactly midnight and you have to finish by 3:33 in the morning.
Never heard this one.
And there's like things that you have to do where you have to write your name on a piece of paper and put a drop of blood with it. So you're actually like pricking your finger with like
Girls
a
are
sewing needle
dark.
you're stealing out of your mom's.
You're
and
all
then you
like
put,
latent
like,
witches,
salt
and you
on
don't.
it.
Yeah.
You refuse to admit it.
And
All we do is talk about you guys, and then you guys are out cutting yourself.
Yeah, and offering yourself the Dark Lord.
seriously, yeah. And things like that and light as a feather, stiff as a board, those dominated. And I mean, Ouija games and things like
You guys
that.
are all into the occult.
Yeah. So that's whenever I'm thinking of like, supernatural occurrences or did I ever have anything like fucked up like this happen, it always goes back to playing those games with my friends and being like, holy fuck, there was that night that we called the Midnight Man and we heard things happening in the next room and her brother was asleep and it couldn't have been her parents. And so they're all back to these kind of times that we were like, I was like in 5th grade invoking the devil with my friends.
Did you go to
giggly.
Did you go to a Catholic school? At all,
No,
private
no,
school?
this is like pure public school.
I went to Catholic school, St. Michael's in Worthington, Ohio, and there was a period, I think it's always like 5th or 6th grade, where all the girls were obsessed with Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
And so every recess, they would go in herds, packs into the bathroom and try to contact Bloody Mary. But it got so out of hand that there was basically a school intervention and letters sent home to the parents warning them to keep an eye on this behavior and not to encourage it because, as you know, playing with the occult is to be taken seriously.
You think about that age group you're talking about, and then recently with the Slender Man stuff and that there's violence actually happening with young girls, like who are buying into some of the stuff.
And it totally, the Crucible and the whole Salem witch trial
Crucible,
suddenly makes sense as well. But yeah, there was just this period from like 4th through 7th grade where I can't even say it was just me because I tend to be kind of drawn to the dark side as in general.
You were starting it.
But yeah, it was like all my friends
girls,
as well.
call the Midnight Man.
Yeah, let's call
I'll be
the
over
Midnight
here.
Man. I have to look up the directions for the Midnight Man now because it's seriously like a list of like 30 things that you have to do.
What we should do is, if you can remember all the names of the girls, or if you have an old yearbook, like we'll dig them up and find their information.
Leave them weird
we
messages.
can.
I know where
And
most
just-
of them are still. It's
or-
a very small town.
Yeah, or just create a Facebook account for Midnight Man,
Midnight Man.
and then just
He's
go
following
and
all
Create
of
our
them.
unfriended. This is our unfriended.
I didn't see it, but
You might actually like
you would
it.
like it because
Believe
it
it or
does
not.
set up an urban legend.
It really does in a pretty modern, fun way.
I've got about
Yeah.
2 years of culture to catch up on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I believe it.
I've been living in Christmas for
Because in
2
New Zealand,
years.
there's no culture there.
No, it's just my life has been nothing but Christmas. So
Yeah.
2 days ago was the first time that I've not seen Christmas decorations.
Oh, wow.
Oh wow.
You know what I mean? So because if I wasn't shooting it, I was cutting it, and then when we finished it, it was Christmas.
And you also filmed a Christmas movie in the least Christmas-like place on Earth because our Christmases are 100 degrees or 90 degrees.
Tropical, yeah.
Tropical because it's summer every year, so
Yeah.
we never see snow for Christmas or anything like that. So it's
There was a bit of I had to teach them what like an American Christmas
it's really
was.
different.
Wow.
Yeah.
we have like
Crazy.
our cards would have like Santa wearing board shorts surfing
Yeah,
growing
that's
up. That was like
weird.
normal, you know.
That's weird.
It is totally weird, yeah.
That.
Well, let me bring up some questions because a lot of people were really excited that you were coming back on the show and wanted to know some stuff. So, and actually, I'm pretty curious about a lot of this. Let's start with Ken Hanley, who's over at Fangoria.com, and he wanted to know one question I specifically intrigued by. For both Trick or Treat and Krampus, you tend to cast ensembles largely with character actors, most of whom are not primarily known for horror work. Is there any reason he chooses to go with these performers as opposed to the people that are synonymous with genre or A-listers? I guess that's like comedic kind of comedic people.
Well,
and
like in Trick or
ensemble them.
Treat, it was Anna Paquin and Brian Cox and Dylan Baker.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it's not like I have anything against casting actors who've done horror, but even on Krampus, you have Toni Collette, who's done The Sixth Sense, and David Koechner has done Final Destination and recently did Cheap Thrills and Scouts
Piranha
vs. Zombies.
3D.
And Adam Scott's done Piranha and Hellraiser 4. Yeah, see,
realized he was in there.
Hellraiser 4. He was in the story about the creation of the puzzle box.
Wait, Ken Hanley's eating his words right now because in fact you
Yeah, Ken. Yeah, but no, but I think to me it's not. So they have done horror, but they're very diverse actors. So all those people have also done a lot of other roles. And I just find you just want good actors.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's fun to take people who haven't done horror, which was the case with Anna Paquin and Brian Cox and Dylan Baker, because to me, horror is more frightening when you kind of don't see it coming. And so if you're watching actors that you don't normally associate with the genre, you're almost more willing to buy it. I mean, Anthony Perkins is on a poster behind you, and I think he's a good example. He's so unassuming.
Yeah.
That it makes the horror more potent.
I love that you cast Anna Paquin not in the movie you decided to shoot in her home country.
I know.
She could have taken her back to New Zealand. She could have been the mom.
But then she does True Blood.
I know.
So it's like she goes from being a
But
werewolf
also,
to...
Krampus is to me, it starts almost like a broad comedy, and so it makes sense to have comedy really.
Well, that was the intent, and that by the way, that was a guiding rule for our cast. Was I was very, very adamant that the first act be a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
And that if MJ Anthony's character Max hadn't torn up the letter,
Yeah, it'd be a different genre.
then it would be a different movie.
Oh, that's
and
fun.
and
That's
that it
a
would have
fun
just
idea.
plodded along
Yeah.
because to me, I love the idea of the genre switch. The idea that even if you take the horror or genre elements out of a certain horror film, that the story and the characters still work. So, for example, if the ghosts never invaded the family in Poltergeist, the Freelings are such great characters
Yeah,
that
good
I'd be
drama.
Yeah, it could be. I'd be
like
completely
in
okay.
a new town, we don't really fit in.
I would just watch them
Yeah,
as a
I agree.
dramedy. But, Rosemary's Baby, if you took out the satanic aspect and it was just about Rosemary and Guy and these quirky old neighbors, I'm into it.
I'm in.
You know what I mean? So it's like if you aren't willing to watch a movie about your characters without the horror.
I can't say that I would have watched the Texas Chainsaw characters without the chainsaw because I got to say I hated.
What if it turned into a sexy summer?
Okay, yeah, that's,
See, you're sold, right? Which is where it was heading.
Yeah.
It was heading in that direction.
But the opening scene of your film, and me and Rob talked about it right after. It's such a great scene. The thing about Black
Friday.
It's
oh
great,
God, yeah.
and it really
so
sets
sums
the tone.
Up, what modern Christmas is,
and why it really that scene alone legitimizes why you would even make the rest of the movie. Like, why would we deserve a Krampus right now? Maybe.
That was the point.
That's
Was this is that's why he really comes.
Yeah,
you know, Max tearing at the litter was really just the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back.
I like the camel that broke the straw.
Yeah, the camel that broke the straw. Yeah,
that works too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Shad Youngblood, was there ever any thought of doing a Christmas anthology? Was this ever designed to be an anthology, or do you want to do a narrative no matter what in terms of Krampus?
No, I think anthology is Trick or Treat's domain.
Right.
But with Krampus, we wanted to make it really the premise was what happens if a horror movie invades the Christmas family dramedy.
Right.
And so it just made more sense to embrace that format.
Armando Garcia, a friend of ours that listens to the show, wants to know about what was it like working with practical effects and bringing that into the kind of Christmas template? Because I think both Trick or Treat and Krampus, you tend to focus primarily on doing things as practical as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to get as much as I can in camera, using practical creatures and makeup and all that stuff. But I'm not against digital, and there's plenty of digital in Krampus. So we did a lot of set extensions. So we only shot on location one day. Everything else was in a soundstage.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So all the outdoor stuff is indoors. That's all on K-Stage over at Stone Street in Wellington. Yeah. And they built the soundstage for King Kong. Like that was what
Miramar.
Yeah, so there's a fun history to it.
That is cool.
To know that there were giant apes and orcs running around in this building, and then us. With Krampus and elves, but so there was a lot of digital. You know, the gingerbread men were digital, but they were told to at least be inspired by stop motion.
Right.
Interesting.
So it's just fun. And nowadays, you can do a practical puppet, and you don't have to worry about hiding your puppeteers or wires or rods because you can just paint them out.
Yeah.
And that's cheap.
Yeah.
So why not use a puppet?
Yeah. I almost don't understand this, so I'm going to ask it anyway. Daniel Harrington wants to know that the majority of monster kills in Krampus were committed by the female cast. Was this a conscious decision, or did it just flow with the narrative as you saw it?
I think it mostly flowed with the narrative, but I'm a big believer in girl power, not just because we have a lovely lady present.
Thanks, guys.
But no, I think I liked the idea that as hard as the men tried, and they definitely contributed, that it was sort of the fierce mothers rising up to protect everybody in the end. Kind of Sarah Connor it, you know?
Yeah. I was distracted because the next guy is Sam Hain and he's dressed as Sam. So I got a little creeped out by that.
Not him again.
I wouldn't be surprised next year if this film does. I mean, I won't do bigger because it's not going to be in theaters, but I could imagine it reaching so many more people.
It's going to have a resurgence.
I think. Well, I just think a lot of people who didn't see it yet or didn't know about it on home video. This is the kind of film that I could really see becoming.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can talk about this yet, but I mean, is there I'm always interested with holiday themed movies. So now, do you wait till next Christmas to put it out on home video?
That's the discussion right now.
In the summer, it's it's on TV.
I know, because it's who wants to watch? I don't even want to watch Krampus in summer.
It's July 13th. Krampus
I don't want people.
Coming to blue.
I don't want people to watch my movies outside of when they're
right after Halloween, right after.
That would be perfect. Yeah, right at Halloween.
Trick or Treat, you start in October.
Yeah.
So Sam Hain, who's dressed as Sam from Trick or Treat, he wants to know, did the studio push a PG-13 rating, or was that kind of what you wanted to do? I'm confused by this because a lot of people, I only saw the movie once and I didn't notice anything weird, but some people had commented that they thought curses were redubbed and things like that, and I was like, I don't know.
No,
so,
it was. I mean, it was an ongoing conversation, and I wrestled with it myself. And is there potentially a harder R version of the film? Absolutely. It's cheap and easy to throw blood everywhere.
Right, but
It's
you want
easy.
to reach the biggest audience possible.
But no, it wasn't about reaching the biggest audience possible. It was also stepping back and being honest with ourselves about, okay, what is Krampus, the larger myth, really about? It's a character that was created, like we talked about earlier, to scare children, but in a fun, playful, fairy tale way. If you go back and look at all the depictions of Krampus throughout history, he's a fun guy. There's a dark mischief about him. He's on a sled with screaming kids in the back, but it's very it's fun. So if you take all of those basic tenets and you apply them and extrapolate what a film needs to be, then it should be a movie that scares kids and is a morality tale for kids or families. And so we made a very conscious effort to make sure that parents or older siblings will bring 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds to act as a gateway film for horror. We have to nurture the next generation of kids, of horror fans. And I don't think 10-year-olds, I love The Walking Dead, but I don't think 10-year-olds should be watching that necessarily.
Yeah.
Because that's really grim. But what got me into horror as a kid was Poltergeist and Gremlins and Twilight Zone.
The Burbs.
Yeah. And there was a tongue-in-cheek, fantastical quality to the horror back then that was almost welcoming. I think it's Zemeckis talks about there's a difference between spooky and scary. And scary is The Exorcist and The Shining and these really intense movies, which we all love. And then spooky is Tales from the Crypt and the Amblin horror films, or even American Werewolf in London, I would say. Evil Dead. Like there's a funhouse aspect to it, and it felt like a genre which has been ignored. And so we wanted to make something that families could go see together.
Don't Look Now, but for kids. With the happy ending.
But do you remember like the controversy that came out after Gremlins and Poltergeist, and parents being really upset because they felt like they slapped PG on something and it was a little too harsh, and it led to the creation of PG-13.
Gremlins in particular. I mean, just I do a little column called Respect, and I respected Mrs. Peltzer because she annihilates the first few Gremlins.
She's
the most violent of ways.
No,
and looks like Ripley, by the way. She looks like the Ripley from Aliens. She looks like Ripley's
My daughter had seen that movie sitting on our shelf, and she wanted to see it so bad, and we would have to Marnie, let's go get some cookies, and then we'd fast forward through the scenes and then come back because she just loves Gizmo.
She's too young for that.
She's way too
edit the
young
Christmas
for most
story
of
out of it.
So we edited everything bad. She's going to talk about her dad in the chimney. Come on, Marnie, let's go to the bathroom real quick.
But I mean, that was
the most punctuated version.
That was one of my favorite memories growing up as a kid. Was the whole family basically getting suckered into seeing Gremlins, thinking it was going to be like E.T. because the original marketing campaign for Gremlins, I remember it very well, is they didn't show you the Gremlins. You saw furry hands coming out of the box, and so the whole family went. My mom hates horror movies, and halfway through it turns into what it does, which is a monster movie, and she was having a blast, and it was an audience full of kids, like a Disney movie audience of kids screaming, some probably too much, and parents having a great time. And it's like, we don't get that anymore, and I just think that it's important.
It's a shame. I mean, we just saw the Gremlins trailer play before something at the New Bev, and that was the thing I noticed is you do not see a gremlin at all.
Right.
They keep it so hidden before you see the movie, which is amazing.
Also, not dumbing down, so even if it was playing for kids, your ending of your movie, I think, is the smartest part of the whole movie, because the movie ends and you're still reflecting on it. You're like, oh wow, this is influenced by Citizen Kane. I didn't expect that. I found your rosebud at the end of it. But it's a really smart ending because it's satisfying on the good, people are okay, and then there's that
Well, how do you
interpret it?
Well, I'm trying to
Somebody actually
carefully in case
I'm sure it's one of the questions.
Yeah, somebody asked if we can get spoilery with the ending, but I was like, but it's up to you. Have you seen?
That
you've
is
seen
such a
movies
David
like
Lynch answer.
Scrooge, then you can maybe think that.
Okay, well, we'll just say spoiler. Don't listen to the next 2 minutes.
Well, did Dorothy go to Oz?
Yeah. Well.
Depends what you believe.
Yeah. See, because I'm always the one who's like, no, it was just a cool dream. Wasn't that pretty? But I mean,
She went to Oz. That's what I think.
she didn't. It was
Then
just
we had
a cool
then
dream.
Same thing.
Exactly.
Same principle.
Yeah.
Same principle there.
Everyone,
Right.
your entire family's dead and trapped inside a crystal ball on Krampus' shelf.
I like hearing people's interpretations.
Yeah.
It's fun, and I'll never say
But it was,
if one's right or wrong.
It was a total St. Elsewhere ending, which I loved. Everybody seen the TV show St. Elsewhere, where at the end, none of you guys are ever going to watch St. Elsewhere, so I'll blow the ending for you.
Fine.
There was this TV show that was on during the 80s,
Denzel.
where like weird things happened in a hospital, and then the last episode, you realize that the entire it was this very Lost style show where all this weird stuff happens in this hospital, and then everybody's like tuning into the final episode, like what's going to be, I don't understand the twist, and it was an autistic boy looking at a snow globe at the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And he dreamed it all, and everybody was like so pissed. I remember my parents being so pissed at the St. Elsewhere.
Well, the funny
ending.
thing is, I didn't know about this because I didn't watch that show as a kid, but someone told me about this ending like the night before the premiere. And I was like,
I think you're okay.
I know.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, the whole movie's a giant love letter to the 80s, so
Yeah.
we'll just say that's one of them.
I totally
Yeah.
referenced St. Elsewhere.
Right.
I mean, if I was watching a sequel, it'd be pretty cool to watch a story about a kid trying to break his family out of a snow globe world
Cut
and
it out, Elric.
escape.
Stop with spoilers.
That'd be a cool
I
sequel.
thought, are we okay with spoilers in the
well,
show?
I guess we'll have to be.
We warned.
But no, but I also
said spoiler.
I also believe that if you haven't seen the movie after a certain point, that's your own fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually a good question. Daniel Darby wants to know, with your past experience having written blockbusters like X-Men 2 and Superman Returns, and now having a couple of solid films under your belt as a director, do you think directing a big budget franchise feature like that is something you'd be interested in the future?
Well, related to Star Wars, I think a Sarlacc Pit spin-off film could be really interesting.
You heard it here first,
Young
everybody.
Sarlacc. There's
Doherty's doing
dreams
the
of
Starlight
stardom.
Pit movie.
Maybe.
Okay.
Eventually.
I mean, because when I've talked to you about Superman or X-Men, you seem to have a deep affinity for the comic books and those characters.
But having ironically started with blockbusters,
right,
and working my way down to horror. Not that it's apples and oranges, but you know what I mean in terms of budget level.
Yeah.
I know the pressures of those films, and as much of an honor as it is to sort of play with these different legacies, there's a freedom and a joy of coming up under the radar on something that's original. So on Trick or Treat and on Krampus, I wasn't under the microscope. The kind of microscope you're under when you do one of those big franchises.
That's the nice thing about some of the some of the best Marvel stuff that's been coming out has been the characters we don't know.
Yeah.
I thought Jessica Jones is brilliant, and I'm curious about some of the stories of I'd love to see somebody take some of that. I remember, Cloak and Dagger and these comics that were kind of throwaway.
Yeah.
That would be less pressure, but
Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Guardians were my favorites.
Yeah, mine too. And
it's all the
ones
weirdos.
that I never knew about before. But when I watch the Iron Mans and the Supermans and the Fantastic
Avengers.
Fours and the Avengers.
So Alpha Flight 2018, go Canada.
Did I hear that they're doing a Solomon Grundy movie?
I don't know.
I thought it may have just been like hey, I wish they would do a Solomon Grundy movie, and I read it and thought that would be awesome. But I still think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So
maybe in the shows he's been popping up.
Okay, that might be it. But some type of.
I also just miss
banter.
mid-budget genre films.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a lot of our favorites. I mean, even Alien was not a big budget movie.
Yeah.
And yet it feels
It was
like
by today's
I mean,
standards.
Well, you know what? I mean, obviously, thankfully, Krampus came out and was successful. But I mean, what was the pressure like going into that movie? Because obviously, Trick or Treat had a dare I say, troubled history. I mean, yes, it became a cult favorite, and we all knew on the horror side that it was a great movie. But it took a little while to officially get out there and get its audience. So, kind of like doing your sophomore movie, was there any pressure, or was Krampus a little bit different a situation?
No, there's always pressure. It's always insane, and it gets dark and scary, and it's a roller coaster ride. But it was just a different kind of pressure, I guess. But I was a little bit more confident in Krampus because it's not as Krampus is weird, but structurally it's just a traditional 3-act film.
Yeah.
Trick or Treat, a big part of why it had trouble was just the non-traditional narrative of it, the anthology, and the studio really struggled with how to market that because nobody wanted to do horror comedy, and nobody was doing anthology. So I really screwed myself by picking these subgenres and trying to get them going. But of course now
everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
Those things are huge.
You were right. That's the point.
Yeah.
What about playing in the comic book world? Because there are Trick or Treat comic books that came out in October. There's a Krampus comic book, and again, you're a big comic fan. So is that something that's kind of like an added benefit to doing this kind of stuff, being able to kind of tell other stories? Because I remember the Trick or Treat book was interesting because you had different writers kind of doing different time periods. Whereas I really loved the Krampus book. That was like, because you almost did the anthology style of Krampus in the comic form, and I thought that was really fascinating.
Well, I was really influenced by horror comics growing up, and horror comics were sort of what I graduated to when I got took a break from superhero comics, and
like the EC comics, or more like the weird Marvel Dracula type characters
or like
they had,
Bongo,
and
Moebius
and stuff.
I read like the Bongo weird shit horror.
I did creepy, eerie, EC, because my dad had a stack of old issues, and so I started pouring through those. And this is just the same age I was digesting and devouring Twilight Zone stuff. But then in the 90s, there was like the Hellraiser comics.
Those were the Bongo ones.
They were awesome. And then Cycle of the Werewolf in the 80s with Bernie Wrightson.
Yeah, the
and so
Stephen King thing. Yeah,
it was neat. Horror comics were neat because they felt like forbidden fruit. They really felt like you were seeing something you weren't supposed to see because comic books are supposed to be just for kids and about superheroes. So to see, like, I remember an image in Cycle of the Werewolf, and it's like the werewolf is tearing off the face of this cop. Yeah. And you can see the skin stretching, and like Bernie really went for the detail.
Well, even the original Ghost Rider comics were amazing. The first time I read the first Ghost Rider, when it was my first comic, got it off the shelf, and I see the guy's face melt. So a skull, and I remember just going, "Oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever read."
Yeah.
And then when I saw the movie, I was like, "Oh." What? Nick Cage, aren't you like the guy's dad?
Yeah.
He was a teenager.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah, that needs to be a horror movie.
I think that could be a series. I could see that in Blade and Moebius, you building a horror franchise off Marvel, a Marvel horror
Offshoot
world,
of that
another
stuff.
offshoot where those characters are interacting with their own adventures. And it is, there's all sorts
happen.
of world.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
The question disappeared. I thought somebody asked about this, and it's not here. But someone had mentioned your animated short Seasons Greetings, which debuted Sam.
Yeah.
And speaking of the comic world, would you be ever interested in doing something like that, like an animated movie?
Yes, I love animation. I actually started as an animator.
Sorry, correction. It wasn't Bongo. It was Boom. Just correct.
Right. I was wondering what you were talking about.
Boom. Sorry,
Comics,
I know.
the Hellraiser comics.
I had to check. I was second guessing.
Before Boom, I think it was Epic.
Epic, yeah, and which is
in the
spin-off
90s.
of Marvel.
Yes,
isn't
it was a branch of Marvel.
Sorry, I was sitting here going.
But the Hellraiser comics were
It was Boom.
amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
truly
I
groundbreaking
just had to
stuff.
factual correct myself.
Yeah,
Boy.
sorry. We were talking
Animated
about
movies. Yeah, is
Animated,
that
yes.
something
I love animation. I used to be an animator. My first job out of college was doing animation for Blue's Clues.
Oh my gosh!
I feel like I'm coming out of the closet.
I feel like my daughter's gonna want your autograph.
Yeah,
You just got a letter. Oh, got a letter.
We're gonna play some Blues Clues.
I'm not even kidding. I started about 2
like
hours
my
ago.
kryptonite. No, it was a great job to have out of college because animation paid well, and I got to learn about digital editing and Photoshop and After Effects.
Green
and,
screen, I assume.
Yeah, just all, it was like all, I got to learn all the tools and be a part of something. But now it's weird because I'll do talks at Legendary. They have an internship program, and I'll wheel me in for a Q&A, and I'll mention that, and the intern's like, "Oh yeah, I used to watch them." Like, no, you're too. What do you mean you used to watch that? And I do the math. I'm like, oh my god, these kids
were born in 2010.
It's terrifying. But I love animation. That's why there's an animated flashback in Krampus.
Oh yeah,
which is actually it's really beautiful.
Thank you. What a Digital killed it.
They did it?
Yeah, they did it. And yeah, we were trying to make it look like old school stop motion. It's sort of like if I did a CG film, it would probably look something like that. But
Elric Kane on Twitter wanted to know what your favorite Wellington cafe was. The answer is Fidel's, but you can answer anything you want.
Well, you know what? No, because I
Starfish, you guys are out there, and I know they go to that one.
Wellington has amazing food, like
best cafe culture in the world.
The best Mexican,
Wow.
the best Mexican
Flying
food
Burrito
I've
Brothers.
had. I didn't. No, I went to. Oh my god! No, I did go there.
Yeah, that's the kind of upscale Mexican place.
Yeah, but yeah, it's an amazing.
I love these side conversations.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we didn't all growing up. They never had a Mexican restaurant until recently. But is that nice to make a film? I'm always curious about the American directors who do go to the middle of nowhere to create a film, and you have mostly American leads besides your Aussie actress. But she's been working here forever. But is that a nice thing, or do you feel is it a little scary to go so far away? Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I've never made something in America. It's always either been in Canada.
I didn't know that.
It's either been in Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. So it's a great reason to travel, and you really get to know the culture. But New Zealand was amazing. Like the crews are so fantastic and well trained, and everyone's so friendly that you feel like an asshole no matter what because you're the American, and we're all obnoxious by nature.
Sorry for being
I know that you feel apologetic
That's what we are.
constantly. They're so warm and friendly that you you feel like they're mocking you.
We're just dicks.
No, yeah. Just want to wear a shirt that says "I'm sorry" like, all the time.
Well, our last fan question, and this is something we bring up with a lot of people that come on the show anyway. Michael Bolin wants to know what are some of the VHS movie rentals that were inspiring you as a kid? Because we are of all of that age where we grew up with video stores, and that was kind of, I know for me and all of us, that's kind of where we fell in love with film, is going to the video store and renting these things with weird boxes and stuff like that. So
yeah,
we loved all your films when we were little kids. 50-year-old man.
The one video box that I remember really pulling me in was Pieces.
Oh, we were just talking about that.
Were you? Like
Blu-ray.
It's
Blu-ray
just
coming
way
out in
too
February.
good.
That's the one that I think is probably one of the first times I rented something from the video store, and it was and the fact that it was only based on the box
and that tag. It was like you don't have to go to Texas for a massacre.
Yeah, that and House.
House. See, I talk about it all the time.
Yeah,
on here.
Ding Dong, You're Dead.
Yeah.
Like there's one of my favorite taglines.
And a great poster with the finger just pushing the button.
Yeah.
I love that one.
What I can't not let you leave without asking, of course, about what's up next. Is Trick or Treat 2 on the horizon, or what? We're all waiting patiently.
I guess I'm out of excuses.
Fan pressure.
Fuck. I better get on that.
Get on it right away.
No, it's. I keep saying that he's sort of my Frankenstein creature and that he's always haunting me, that he just wants more life and keeps coming back and soon he'll want a bride or something. But now that Krampus is out of the way, I think the paths are clearing.
Are you excited to go back into that world?
Yeah, it's exciting and nervous, but more exciting.
Yeah.
Because my life will now be nothing but Christmas, Halloween, and X-Men. So it's like I think I'm good. If I can just sort of coast to the grave on that, I'll feel pretty good.
Can we get any insight into kind of what subgenres you're looking at to be part of Trick or Treat 2? Like one of the things that made Trick or Treat 1 so fun is that the stories were so vastly different from each other. Kind of what subgenres are you exploring to include in this one?
I don't know if it's about subgenres as much as I I'm really fascinated with the way that Halloween is celebrated in different geographic locations.
Yeah.
Which is in time periods, which is also the reason why in the comic book we sort of explored things that we would never be able to afford in a Trick or Treat film. So, going back to ancient Ireland or the Old West, these are sort of stories that, again, we probably couldn't afford on film, but I want to take... It's tough because you always want to retain a certain suburban quality to it because that's just synonymous with the holiday and trick-or-treating, but...
When did America start celebrating Halloween? I mean, like, what period was it? Was it in the West or not?
It grew... From what I understand, it varied. I'm trying to all of a sudden all the old History Channel specials are flooding back into my head
at once.
Yeah.
Trick or treating, didn't it come over? Well, this is just my parents telling me stuff, but it came over with the Irish immigrants, I thought.
Well, I mean, it's tough because it gets so blurry, but because there's some theories that the trick or treating really started in order just to stop kids from burning down houses.
Yeah.
Like you do.
Well, because it used to be genuinely scary with, I mean, not unlike Devil's Night in, I think it's Detroit, where they had hundreds of fires per night, thousands even, I guess. But that was something that happened in a lot of cities. And so in order to control kids, they started having Halloween parties and encouraging trick-or-treating as sort of an organized chaos.
That's a movie, like the first Trick or Treat. Like, what was that? Like, if people knocking your door, that's kind of how it was trick or treating in New Zealand. It's like, what the fuck are you at my door?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, they shoot you. But no, there's something fun about, like, I remember moving from Ohio, where Halloween is very traditional, and you just go from house to house with your siblings and your parents, to New York, where it's the New York Halloween parade, which is a whole completely,
so wonderful.
And it's really decadent. They have these giant puppets and everything like that. And then I remember I spent a Halloween in the Pine Barrens hearing campfire stories about the Jersey Devil. So, and then hearing about how they do it differently in New Orleans. And so it just really fascinates me the way that every city, every region has their own sort of recipe for what Halloween's supposed to be. So I'm hoping that the next movie starts to draw upon that.
And trick-or-treating in New York City I was always amused by, because the kids don't go door to door because there's no, like, door to door.
No, they'll go in apartment to apartment.
In my street,
or
I
floor to
lived
floor.
in Chelsea for years. They went businesses. So, like, they would go up and down. Like, you would go
that's
into, like,
smart.
Gristedes and, like, trick-or-treat at Gristedes.
That's called shoplifting.
I know, but they would actually be prepared for it. Or you'd go into, like, the hair salon
That's
and then,
so
like,
cool.
the hat shop next door. And they would actually be prepared for the kids trick-or-treating up and down the street.
I find Halloween in LA is actually, I have to say, after living in a few different regions, Halloween in LA is hard to beat.
Yeah.
Because you have all these great movie theaters that do nothing but play horror movies all month long.
And all the haunts and stuff. I mean,
all the haunts. It's almost too
haunters,
much.
because there are so many people here that are part of the industry but just have this passion for horror.
Yeah.
And so the amount of home haunts that we get is amazing. Like
Yeah.
Rob and I went to a
This
bunch
guy
of them
goes
this
all
year.
out.
But you also
Well,
get
like
parents who are doing the makeup in movies.
Yeah.
And suddenly
Yeah.
you see these incredible
The level of
costumes.
quality because of everybody works the instrument. Like,
And
there's Boney Island's one I like a lot. And
Boney Island was great.
I think I heard like that's like some guy that used to like produce The
I think
Simpsons
he
or
was
whatever.
like Simpsons guy, and we went to Rotten Apple this year, or Poison Apple. It was Rotten Apple in Burbank this year.
Yeah.
We went to a couple of them, but they were just it was just these like little Burbank and Toluca Lake homes where people were just like, fuck it, let's build a maze in the front yard, and they were great.
Yeah.
I do love that they start mid-September here now too. That's
Let's think, it starts so early here. I think it really starts Labor Day, first weekend of September. All of a sudden, the pumpkin patches start popping up.
It's awesome and brutal at the same time.
It honestly, it can be too much. Like you start to get exhausted.
pretty rough.
Yeah, and I loved it this year. Actually, the three of us, I keep forgetting, we all three took our kids trick-or-treating together.
Oh, that's
except
right.
for,
Where?
Yeah, we went to Burbank.
Okay.
And all of us went trick-or-treating together. Ryan Turek came along.
you gotta come to Hancock Park sometime.
They hand out full candy bars in Burbank. I
So
came
do we.
home with so many like full-size candy bars, and I was like, my God, these people love Halloween. So
'Cause my recent tradition, I used to have a huge party, but it just got to be a bit much. And lately, it's been a very small group of friends, terrifying trick-or-treaters.
That's fun.
it was awesome.
I love that. I got
Let me take it back and rephrase it. Rewarding the brave trick-or-treaters.
right.
That's the difference. It's just, but the fun thing is seeing how much the parents get into it.
Yeah.
And that the parents are the ones laughing as their kids are crying, trying to get a handful of candy from the pool at the end of the sidewalk.
No, I remember that because, obviously I grew up loving being on the other side of the trick-or-treating, and then now you're too old to do that sort of thing. When I first moved to town, I used to go with the Kellers to take their kids trick-or-treating. And here in LA, there's blocks of parts of towns where like the whole block is in on it, and everybody just goes there to trick-or-treat. And just one year I dressed up as the Wolfman or whatever it was, and I'm just like standing completely silent and watching these little kids walk by me like so carefully, and I was like, I fucking like this. This kid is scared of me. If I move a little bit, he'll jump out. It's just fun.
I did Michael Myers this year because it's so simple, and the parents are unnerved by Michael.
Wow.
So the parents get a little bit nervous because I would usually like 6 friends all in different monster robes and masks and stuff, sort of scaring the kids as they walk up the long path to the house to get the candy.
Like, you stay totally still and then wait.
I tend to sort of lurk around the street, like standing on the corner, like watching from behind a hedge. Because Michael was more effective when he kept his distance and just sort of lurked. Yeah. And so I would do that, and then as they would leave the house, I would then start to follow. And the parents would get really nervous because I would proceed past the safe bounds or cross the street after them even. Because usually, like, once you get past the driveway, they're supposed to be safe. Yeah. But I would continue a little bit past that.
You just asked for this, now I'm going to ask you. If any genre, I mean, any franchise, if you could redo something or do a sequel, would it be... Are any of them interesting enough that you think there's more life to that story?
If there was a
like a Michael or a Jason, is there any of those that still hold any power in your imagination? I'm just curious. Because you have such a good handle on standing around creeping people out as Michael. So.
Well, it's tough. I mean, those characters are beloved. That's why we're all sitting here, I think. But I think a lot of the power of those characters is really... initially what you don't know about them. So unfortunately, the more familiar you become,
the less power.
Yeah. Like there's no surprise left. That said, I wouldn't mind doing like an Alien film.
Yeah. Well, because we still don't know everything about that. I mean, Prometheus is kind of starting to explain things away, but
but I think you also haven't explored the vast potential of it. I mean, it was the Dark Horse comics, speaking of horror and sci-fi comics, the Dark Horse series really explored the potential roads the aliens could take, and it got really scary and big.
Can you imagine, like, if Walking Dead hadn't existed, but if the aliens had made it to Earth and it had basically started taking over, and what kind of a series you could have had, like The Walking Dead, but with aliens?
Well, that's what
that would have been.
That's what the Dark Horse.
That's
comics,
what it was.
Yeah, it was great.
That's
they had
cool.
They had like
I'd love to see that.
Hives. They would build hives in different regions, and you found out
Detroit's so fucked.
Well,
it's always Detroit. It's always Detroit.
Well, each hive had its own queen.
Yeah.
But you found out how smart the aliens were, and that if you got impregnated with a queen chest burster,
how bad that is.
You might carry it longer than normal, so that chest burster could spread to a different region.
Man.
That the aliens were strategic.
Because Ripley had a queen in her at one point, right?
In Alien 3.
I don't know if we should be discussing this.
I'm good.
Rebekah, who's about to burst.
I
know, exactly. Yeah,
I'm like a ticking bomb here.
With Rosemary Woodhouse today.
I gotta tell you, I was telling these guys, I haven't been to Universal Horror Nights in a couple of years, but I went this last October, and I've always loved the Aliens movies, but their Alien versus Predator maze is fucking terrifying.
I love it.
When you see a queen in person,
it's amazing.
You're like, oh my god,
you're genuinely awestruck.
I was scared. I was scared shitless. I was like, yep, I would be scared if I saw that for real.
Yeah, I practically genuflected in front of the queen. Yeah.
In the last couple of years, like you said, you're kind of obviously in your own bubble, but do you try to keep up with the latest horror films?
Yeah.
Did you see It Follows? Did you see any of the kind of bigger releases this year?
I try. It's just really hard. So I have I think I mentioned I've got 2, maybe 3 years of stuff to catch up on. And it's hard because there's genuinely so much great stuff out there.
Did you go out to cinemas in New Zealand while you were doing it, or were you too busy?
Not a lot. I saw Mad Max, which I loved, at the Embassy.
Yep, biggest theater.
That made me really happy. That movie made me really, really happy.
And that screen is amazing.
Yeah.
PJ put a lot of money into that.
Yeah. That said, I did dip into something that I really liked. It Follows.
Yeah.
Babadook. Loved Final Girls. And then TV-wise... Jeez. throw me something because I can tell you it's hard.
Shortland Street.
Yeah.
What's that?
Shortland Street. You must have heard of that. Oh, you didn't hear of it? Well, it's our only TV show.
Oh, no.
It's like our-
no, actually, since you're so obsessed with New Zealand.
Shorters.
I have to mention it in every...
Shorters.
Way to milk
What We
it,
Do in the
Elric.
Shadows was brilliant.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite movie last year.
That was my number
by far.
one, too.
Yeah, and it was so weird because I did watch that while living in Wellington.
Yeah.
So I'm walking, and like Wellington,
Except the nightclubs, all the clubs.
It's a small city. It's like living in Disneyland. There's only so many streets downtown.
I love it. I love
and so all of a sudden, I'm like, you're walking the same spot where the werewolves and the vampires had their little pissing match.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and I
That was
loved
pretty
it.
amazing.
Werewolves,
Yeah.
not swearwolves. That's a good line. Yeah.
Yeah, no, TV's really good. I mean, Hannibal just wrapped up.
Loved
That was
Hannibal.
great.
Loved Hannibal.
We were talking about Fargo at the top of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Fargo was fucking terrific.
Well, that's where I found
American
Alison
Marston.
Tolman.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
for
that's
season
right.
from
Yeah.
season 1.
Season 1, she's terrific in that. It was
Yeah.
great to see her in Krampus. Yeah.
Yeah, she was the whole reason I watched because Thomas Tull, the head of Legendary, he read the script and we were developing it, and he goes, "I know who's the perfect actress to play Linda, the sister," and he goes, "Go watch the Fargo TV series." And I was sort of skeptical because Fargo is such a great movie. I didn't know how they could potentially live up to the promise of the film, and it was great.
No spoilers
binged
about
it.
season 1. I skipped straight to season 2, and it was the best
You got to
thing I
go
saw.
back
fine.
and see season
Yeah,
one.
That's
season
probably
one
fine. It
is
probably
awesome.
works.
It was set 30 years earlier. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're just watching it
Now I'm going to watch season 1.
chronologically.
It's fun,
Yeah.
But I also really enjoy Bates Motel.
Yeah, I like it too.
It's
sleazy fun.
Did you
no,
hear?
but Vera's the
Oh, yeah,
best.
Vera's-
Vera's great, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really looking forward to today. They released some teasers for their Damien show, their Omen
Which
show.
actually looks pretty good.
looks pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty pumped. For
I do
it.
like that they're following the movie.
the original.
Well, I guess they're ignoring 2 and 3.
Kind of, yeah, because it's their own adult Damien, but they're like linking right back to Donner's movie, which is kind of cool.
I have the daggers. I'm wondering if they need to borrow them.
If you're listening, producers of Damien, Michael Dougherty has them.
Has the daggers.
Well, they're replicas, but they're pretty good.
There's a podcast I just wanted to check before we ended if you had heard it, but called Lore.
Yeah, I love lore.
Okay, I was making sure because if you hadn't, I figured you'd be all over it.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it's
The
fantastic.
lore podcast.
I love to fall asleep to lore. It's like
Yeah, because
hearing a
they
ghost story
analyze,
before going
ghost
to
story, and
bed.
then they look behind the scenes, and it sounds like they got a little bit of funding or something. I just read this week, and that they're going to go bigger scope in the future and make
Oh, wow.
bigger historical kind of stuff.
That's the good and bad of it. Is we're definitely living in times where, whether it's horror, sci-fi, fantasy, genre. Let's put the big G label on it. There's just so much of it, and genuinely great stuff. Whether it's in theaters or podcasts, comic books, TV, it's almost too much. So my new rule is I don't bother unless 4 or 5 people whose opinions I trust tell me to or
Yeah.
suggest it. So like the one that keeps breaking that is Mr. Robot. Everyone's like, you have to watch
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Robot.
haven't seen it yet either.
Too. I haven't
Keep
seen
hearing how great it is.
But we started the show talking about how Making a Murderer, which is on Niv, how it spread like
Yeah.
within days.
Yeah, wildfire, yeah.
I think I saw Travis Stevens post it, and it was before anyone else I know had said anything. And then suddenly that night, I think the next night,
Yeah, I was-
you
I
had
was
seen
on
2
top of it right
episodes.
away. First.
Then I saw
Yeah.
it, and it was just one of those things that
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is there's so much of that. There's so much addictive television.
Yeah.
that it's
we consume everything so different.
you have to pace yourself because I
Yeah.
made the mistake of putting on Making a Murderer before going to bed, thinking I'll watch one episode. Cut to
And
8 in
then-
the morning.
That's
Yeah.
how I was.
8 in the morning, and I'm still
Yeah.
watching.
Like
you're all
11
messed up.
o'clock on Tuesday of Christmas break, I started it and was like, oh, Rob watched it yesterday. I'll just check out an episode. 4 episodes later, I
Yeah.
was like prying myself away from the TV, like I have to fucking go to bed. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's weird because you feel that it's like a drug rush.
That and yeah,
You know
The
this
urgency.
You know that it's not good for you to stay up and binge all this, but you can't stop.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I used to play video games all the time in college, and it's like where you want nothing more than to just stay up and keep playing, and you're well aware that it's 3 a.m., but it's just, it's what you want to be doing.
Oh, Jessica Jones, you mentioned that earlier. Same thing happened.
Yeah.
Daredevil.
That really surprised me, Jessica Jones, though, because I knew so little. The Daredevil I knew well.
Yeah.
Jessica Jones I knew nothing,
You
and
hear
I was
that,
like
Scott
just so
Reynolds?
pulled
Look
into
at
it.
all this love.
My ritual, when I discovered, I caught up on 2 seasons of Hannibal, and my ritual became
My roommate. Hi,
hi roommate.
Boy.
Dave Foy.
My ritual for binging Hannibal was I would wake up in the morning and cook like a really nice breakfast, but like Hannibal style in slow motion. But like
Dressed in a really nice clothes.
right. With someone gagged in the corner.
Yeah.
But no, it was like bacon that came in a slab, and you had to slice it.
Oh God, yeah.
And like the creamiest, richest scrambled eggs possible, and then
Yeah.
I would sit down and watch Hannibal
That's pretty fun.
every morning.
Is that TV? Is that a world that you still want to maybe dabble in at some point? Because I remember back there were screenings of Trick or Treat, and you were pitching a werewolf show called Bitches, which I thought was hilarious.
It was Sex and the City meets The Howling.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's amazing. But is that still like not Bitches in particular? But I'm saying
TV
because
in
of how
general.
great TV is at this point. Is that something as a creator that you'd want to dabble your toe in?
Potentially, it would have to be the right thing, and it's hard because the demands of television, especially if you make a show that's successful, then they want 5-6 seasons.
Yeah,
and something I do enjoy about film is knowing that there's a beginning and an end, and then I can relax for a little bit before having to move on. With TV, it's just constant. And also when you do movies, you can tell different stories, go bounce around different genres. So an anthology TV show would be great.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Tales from the Dark Side back. Of all the ones, that I feel like that label could mean anything to people.
I think they're all going to come
They
back.
all come back, yeah.
I think within the next, I think we're going to be entering the next stage where all of a sudden you're going to
Twilight
be.
Zone and everything's back. Yeah.
There's been whispers about all of them out there, so
Yeah, a lot
which is
of
great.
The titles have been swapped around studios of who has rights to this and
Yeah.
how do we reinvent this.
and
they keep coming up on radar.
Well, you heard about that, like Twilight Zone was supposed to happen over at CBS, and my old friend Brian Singer was going to do it, and I don't know if they still are, but can I tell you my idea for
Yes.
Yeah.
it? Okay. This is my favorite. So I want to do a sequel to the William Shatner Gremlins episode, right? And my idea is you bring back William Shatner. And it's William Shatner decades later, same character.
Oh, wow.
He's just now becoming normal. He's on the flight with his therapist, his doctor. You know, he's got his pills and everything. It's a big thing. It's a packed flight, transcontinental, whatever. And then there's the fucking gremlin again, and it's on the wing, and he's like, but you're not sure if he's imagining it or is it
That's
really
hilarious.
there. But I think what happens in the end is, like, basically everyone on the plane sees it this time.
Oh, yeah.
He's not crazy. They're all trying to deal with it. Maybe there's more of them.
Yeah.
They crash land the plane, big climactic finale, and all these people are swearing it's gremlins, is blamed on mass hysteria, and he's the only one who's fine.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, in the end,
therapy.
he's now cured. Like, it's this
Which
horrible
is so true, probably, to
thing,
believe
but all the plane passengers swear they saw gremlins, but they're all...
You better move quickly. The Shatner's been around for a while.
That's my idea, and
love
how,
that. That's
you know what I
You could do
mean?
the same thing with Lithgow.
Yeah.
That's
Either-
true.
Either or.
he
They
has a
should both
cameo.
be in it.
Like, they're just sitting across the aisle from each other.
Best moment in
Honestly,
that was a moment in Third
Yeah.
Rock from the
That's
Sun
it, yeah.
where Shatner goes to pick Lithgow goes to pick Shatner up at the airport,
Oh, they do it.
and he gets off and he goes, "I saw this thing on the plane," and then Lithgow goes, "The same thing happened to me," and it was like this wonderful self-aware
That's
moment.
really funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
but you do that in this, and then like the
Like
gremlin
lions.
from the black and white is on one wing.
Oh,
and the
yeah.
Oh
other-
my god, that'd be amazing. That'd be
Oh, yeah, and
amazing.
shooting in black and white, that would be fun.
I would love to do a sequel like that to a Twilight Zone episode.
If Twilight Zone came back, though, I don't know if I'd want to see it on like a CBS. I'd really like to see it on like a Showtime where there's only like 10 of them, and they're going to be high production values, and they're going to be
A little
really
bit
good.
more extreme, like
and just
whenever-
really like open.
Well, you know, I
Well,
mean-
hold on. Twilight Zone is never meant to be
No,
No,
extreme.
Twilight Zone
Yeah, yeah,
wasn't.
yeah.
But that was like my problem when like Masters of Horror became fear itself. Is it just became really kind of.
I mean, I had a problem with both of those. I didn't. Master of Horror is okay. There's some good ones in
Yeah,
there.
you're
I'm not.
right.
Well, every anthology is like
Yeah,
that.
but Twilight Zone was always about an idea. It was a conceptual show. It was about a concept, and it wasn't about the gore or anything like
Right.
that.
It was
much
elegant.
more- it was
Exactly.
Like social
Yeah.
I'm talking more about
statements.
production values than I am like pushing the envelope. Like that, at least they can. Like I was just at the start of the show when you were here. I was talking about the 2000s one, and it's just so bad.
Well,
and they're 20 minutes.
What the
and they're,
Twilight Zone did brilliantly is that it elevated the genre.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's something to strive towards. And
What about Black Mirror? Because to me, that's
haven't
the
seen it
modern.
yet.
Oh, you
I
have
know,
to.
I
Let's
know.
get on it because that's kind of the
delayed.
modern.
It is. It's as
called
close
the
as
modern
anyone.
Twilight Zone, but
Yeah.
it really is. It's
It's-
really just
heard it's classy.
brilliant
And there's
writing.
only a couple
Yeah.
episodes per season. Like there's 3 or 4.
So
episodes.
they
You
don't.
have to space them out. You cannot marathon a show.
it's
Otherwise,
brutal.
you will curl up in a ball in the corner.
It's all about
depressed.
technology. That's the
So,
one
but
difference.
it's
all about
sci-fi.
It's slightly in the future, like maybe within the next 5-10 years.
But not too
and it's
distant
a
future.
sci-fi conceit, and then you stick with characters based on that conceit. And it's the Black
It's
Mirror
stunning.
is this. It's technology.
It's
It's
the Black
everything
Mirror as a blank screen.
that it's something to do with technology that's
Yeah.
not too far fetched.
It's our dark reflection when we see ourselves
Yeah.
in this black mirror.
Yeah.
But they're all very bleak and supposed to be kind of portraits of what we're becoming. So, like, at the end of every one, you're left with this kind of, like,
pretty bummed out. about life.
desolate, like, oh my
Hole
God,
in your
what have we done to
Yeah,
ourselves? It's
yeah.
already here. I can't stop
But
this
it's
feeling.
brilliant. It's really some of the most brilliantly written stuff
That's cool.
out there right now.
Yeah, you would definitely like it.
But that's why I want more anthology,
Yeah.
because it allowed for more variety in storytelling. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and at one point we had Twilight Zone reboot, Amazing Stories, Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt,
Outer Limits.
from Dark
was
Side.
up
Outer
all the
Limits,
time.
Tales from the Dark
Monsters,
Side. Yeah.
Freddy's Nightmares, I guess you
Freddy's
could throw
Nightmares.
in there.
Sure.
But you know what I mean.
We'll throw that in there.
But there was like 8 years where there were just so many anthology TV shows, and that's where a lot of the people we look up to now got their start.
Yeah, well, the hope now is if they do reboot those ideas, is that they just get the right people involved. Because Brian Fuller being attached to Amazing Stories, like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
That's cool. All
Yeah.
right, so
There's a
whenever we
visionary.
do Tales from the Crypt or Tales of the Dark
Yeah.
Side, as long as they get the right people involved.
Well, I
then
heard
that'll
M.
be
Night's
interesting.
doing Tales from the Crypt, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think
Wow.
that's happening.
That
which is-
has switched hands a number of times
Yeah.
in the past couple of years because at one point I know MTV was going to remake Tales from the Crypt, and then I heard that it was going to be Chiller, and then it was this individual company was doing it,
Yeah.
and now M. Night has it. So it's jumped ships a number
The last
of
Tales from the
times.
Crypt thing I heard, and this is going back a few years ago, is that they're like, we don't like the Crypt Keeper, and we don't want it to be an anthology. We want it to be like The Walking Dead. It's like, but why are you going to call it Tales from the Crypt?
awesome.
And thus
Bring
the
me that
studio
executive.
problems begin.
Yeah,
know,
that's where you stray. But it would be nice if a new golden era of anthology TV shows started, because then it's you have a great mix of old talent working with up and coming talent,
Yeah.
and you get fresh new stories.
Well, then we have things like Netflix, like different avenues to see.
Yeah.
The thing, we were all nervous because Black Mirror, for example, is a UK show, and the guy that shepherded it, it's like, oh, there's going to be an American remake soon. It turned out that no, they're bringing him on to do it exclusively for Netflix as a new
wow.
season. So it's like, great, you have the same creative team. Maybe they'll bring in American actors or something, but it'll be a continuation of what's already there.
That's great.
Great.
So that's the right way to do it.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, so TV would be awesome if we can bring that back.
we hope so.
I mean, X-Files is coming back.
I know. I can't wait.
Oh, man.
I still can't even really believe it.
I know,
You know,
but I'm
until it's
glad
on,
that
I
it's,
want-
You want
yeah.
to believe.
I do
you
want to believe.
but it's only like 6 episodes. I like that. I like that it's all right. We got 6
Right.
solid
Yeah.
episodes
Yeah.
coming. That's
Which I'm sure will lead to more if these are
Yes.
a success.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, Michael, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thank
coming
you.
down
This
to
is
do
fun.
the show
Yeah.
again. Really appreciate it. Big fan of Krampus. Can't wait for it to come out on Blu-ray
Next
and,
Christmas.
And next Christmas.
I don't know.
We don't know
see.
when exactly, but hopefully next Christmas. And yeah, we wish you the best on everything, man. Again, keep making cool shit for us.
Thanks.
Thanks for giving Luke Calker work. Needed it.
Alrighty, we will see you next week. Thanks, guys.